Welcome to the Crime for Sleep channel. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Story 1. I remember the first time I saw it, that old green couch sitting in the corner of Eliza Martin's otherwise pristine living room. It was my third day working this case, and something about that couch kept drawing my attention. In a room full of sleek, modern furniture with the price tags barely removed, this threadbare piece looked like it had been dragged in from another decade entirely. The September rain tapped gently against the windows of the apartment as I walked slowly around the living room, the floorboards creaking softly beneath my weight. The space still carried that distinct smell of new beginnings, fresh paint, cleaning products, and the cardboard boxes stacked neatly along the wall. But there was something else too, something that seemed to emanate from that corner where the couch sat. A subtle scent of earth and aged fabric, like something that had spent too long in a damp basement. "She just moved in last Thursday," Officer Brennan said, his voice low as he flipped through his notes. "Everything was delivered new according to the neighbors. Furniture came Wednesday. She arrived Thursday morning. Building manager said she paid for a full year up front." I nodded, my eyes still fixed on the couch. It didn't match anything else in the apartment. The cushions sagged in the middle, and one armrest was torn, revealing yellowed padding underneath. In an apartment where everything seemed deliberately chosen, this piece felt like an intrusion. "Did anyone mention the couch?" I asked, pulling on a pair of latex gloves. Brennan looked up from his notepad. "No mention of it. Sister said everything was new. Even showed me the receipts from Modern Living and Craft House Furnishings. Nothing about a second-hand couch." I approached it slowly, as though it might somehow react to my presence. The fabric was a deep forest green, faded in patches where years of sunlight had bleached it. My fingers traced along its back, feeling the rough texture, so different from the smooth surfaces that populated the rest of the apartment. "Where is she now?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Cases like this followed patterns, and Eliza Martin had become another statistic the moment that key was found. "Still missing," Brennan replied. "For days now. No activity on her cards. Phone's been off since Thursday night. Her sister filed the report Saturday after she missed their weekly call." I circled around to the front of the couch and knelt before it. The scent was stronger here, musty and organic. Something about it reminded me of gardening, of turning over soil after a heavy rain. My mind flashed involuntarily to the last case I'd worked with similar elements, the West Side disappearances from 2 summers ago. We'd found those victims buried in community garden plots, wrapped in plastic like macabre time capsules. "They checked for prints?" I asked, my eyes scanning the worn fabric. "Preliminary sweep came back clean. Too many varied textures on the fabric for good prints. Lab's still working on it." I nodded slowly, my gaze fixed on a slight discoloration on one of the cushions. It could have been anything, a coffee stain, a splash of wine, but experience had taught me to question everything in a space where someone had vanished. "Have we heard back from forensics yet?" I kept my voice steady, professional. "Nothing definitive," Brennan said. "They found trace amounts of soil embedded in the seams of the couch. Initial tests suggest it's not local, higher clay content than what we typically see in city soil." I leaned closer to the cushion with the discoloration, noticing how the fabric there seemed more taut than the surrounding areas, as though something was pressing against it from within. Carefully, I ran my fingers along the edge where the cushion met the frame of the couch. There was a slight separation in the fabric, not a tear, but a deliberate cut. The apartment was silent except for the soft patter of rain and the occasional car passing on the street below. I reached into my pocket for the small flashlight I always carried and shone it into the gap between the cushion and the frame. The beam caught something metallic, the glint of brass or gold. "Hand me those tweezers from my kit," I said, not taking my eyes off the spot. Brennan passed them to me, and I carefully widened the opening in the fabric. With steady hands, I reached in with the tweezers and extracted a small brass key. Old-fashioned, the kind you might use for a safety deposit box or a small padlock. Attached to it was a small piece of paper, folded several times until it was barely larger than the key itself. The room seemed to grow quieter as I unfolded the note with the tweezers. The handwriting was neat, precise, written with a steady hand. "You'll need this soon." A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the apartment's overzealous air conditioning. I looked up at Brennan, whose expression had shifted from professional detachment to something closer to unease. "Bag this," I said, holding up the key and note, "and get the team back in here. I want this couch taken apart seam by seam." The rain continued its gentle rhythm against the windows as more officers arrived. The apartment gradually filled with the quiet, methodical sounds of an investigation intensifying, the snap of camera shutters, the murmur of professional conversations, the rustle of evidence bags. 3 hours later, we had our answer. The couch had been thoroughly dismantled, each piece of fabric carefully removed and examined. Hidden in the frame, tucked between layers of padding and springs, was a smartphone, not Eliza's, which was still missing, and a small black notebook. The phone was a burner, no SIM card, wiped clean except for a single photo. A nondescript storage unit with the number 437 clearly visible on its rolling door. The notebook contained only addresses, 17 of them, written in the same precise handwriting as the note. The last address on the list was Eliza Martin's new apartment. The first 16 addresses corresponded to residences where women had gone missing over the past 3 years. Women who, like Eliza, had just moved into new places. Women who had seemingly vanished without a trace. As we cross-referenced the storage facility in the photo with facilities in a 100-mile radius, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being led down a predetermined path. The couch, the key, the note, it felt less like evidence accidentally left behind and more like breadcrumbs deliberately placed. 2 days later, we found storage unit 437 at a facility just outside the city limits. The manager told us it had been rented for 5 years, paid in cash annually. The payments arrived by mail, never in person. The key fit perfectly. Inside the storage unit, we found no bodies, no Eliza Martin. Instead, there were 17 boxes, each labeled with a name and date. 16 of the names belonged to the missing women. The 17th box was labeled Eliza Martin with yesterday's date. Inside Eliza's box was another key and another note, almost there. This new key led us to another storage unit in another facility, where we found yet another key and another cryptic message. It was as though someone had created an elaborate treasure hunt, with each clue leading us deeper into a labyrinth of their design. We're still following the trail now, still finding keys and notes and storage units. Sometimes we find personal effects belonging to the missing women, a bracelet here, a book there, never anything that tells us where they are or if they're still alive. And sometimes, in the quiet moments between discoveries, I think about that green couch. how it sat there in Eliza Martin's pristine apartment like an invitation or a warning, how it didn't belong yet seemed to be exactly where it was meant to be. I think about how we're all sitting on couches that aren't ours, living in spaces filled with threats we haven't yet identified, surrounded by dangers we can't see until they're already part of our lives. The rain is falling again tonight as I write this in my case journal. Tomorrow will follow another key to another location. Tomorrow we might find Eliza Martin and the 16 other women who disappeared before her. Or we might just find another couch that doesn't belong, another key, another note leading us deeper into someone else's game. And somewhere I know he's watching, the man who delivers couches to women who never ordered them, the man who hides keys and leaves notes, the man who takes women from their homes without leaving a trace. He's watching and waiting, and I can't shake the feeling that we're doing exactly what he wants us to do. The only question is, what happens when we reach the end of his trail? Story 2, she couldn't sleep. There was a faint whispering behind the bed, not loud but constant. She pulled the frame away from the wall and found a small hole leading to a crawl space lined with foam. In the center, a handheld recorder, still running. The manila folder rests heavily in my hands, its edges softened by years of handling. The case that wouldn't let me sleep. The whispers that followed me home every night for 3 months in the summer of 2017. I run my finger along the tab labeled Marin, E-Case 2284, and let the weight of memory settle around me like dust motes in afternoon light. I was the lead detective assigned to Alina Marin's case, not because of seniority or special skills, but simply because I was available when the call came in. A Tuesday morning in June, the kind where the air already feels thick by 9 a.m., promising the sort of heat that makes tempers short and patience thin. "Detective Sawyer," I answered, my coffee still too hot to drink. "We've got something unusual at Pine Creek Apartments. Unit 27, woman reporting. Well, sounds like a surveillance situation." The dispatcher's voice carried a note of uncertainty that I would come to recognize intimately in the weeks ahead. The Pine Creek complex was neither new nor old, just forgettably average. 3 stories of beige siding and modest balconies arranged around a small courtyard with a neglected barbecue area. The kind of place where people lived quietly between stages of their lives, where neighbors nodded but rarely remembered names. Alina Marin's apartment was on the 2nd floor, at the end of an outdoor walkway that creaked slightly underfoot. She opened the door before I could knock, as if she'd been watching through the peephole, waiting. "You're the detective?" she asked, her voice soft but steady. She was perhaps 40, with dark hair pulled back tightly, wearing a neat blouse despite the growing heat. Nothing about her appearance suggested someone prone to imagination or hysteria. "Detective Sawyer, yes," I showed my badge, though she barely glanced at it before stepping aside to let me in. The apartment was immaculate, almost unnaturally so, with nothing out of place. Books arranged by height on shelves, mail stacked precisely on a small desk near the window, kitchen counters bare except for a single mug beside the sink. "I know how this will sound," she began, motioning for me to follow her into the bedroom, "but someone has been listening to me, in my room, while I sleep." The bedroom continued the theme of precise orderliness. A made bed with hospital corners, a nightstand with a lamp and a single book, closed curtains letting in just enough light to see without brightness. Alina moved to the head of the bed, a simple wooden frame without a headboard. "For weeks I've had trouble sleeping. At first I thought it was just stress from work, she explained, her fingers tracing the edge of the wall where it met the wooden frame. But then I started to hear it, a whisper, so faint I thought I was imagining it. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. In my line of work, you learn to listen without judgment, especially in the beginning. Sometimes the strangest complaints lead to the most straightforward explanations. Sometimes they don't. Last night I finally moved the bed, she continued, gesturing for me to help her pull the frame away from the wall. The bed slid easily across the hardwood floor, revealing a small, nearly perfect circle cut into the drywall, about the size of a silver dollar. Eleanor handed me a small flashlight from her nightstand drawer. When I leaned in and shined the light through the hole, I felt the first chill that would become familiar throughout this case. Behind the wall was a narrow crawl space, perhaps 3 feet wide, lined meticulously with foam acoustic panels, the kind used in home recording studios to dampen sound. In the center of this carefully constructed space sat a digital recorder, its small red light indicating it was still actively recording. I didn't touch anything else, Eleanor said quietly behind me. I just pushed the bed back and called you. The care taken in constructing this listening post sent a clear message. This was no impulsive act. Someone had spent considerable time creating this space, cutting into the wall with precision, installing sound-dampening material to muffle their own movements, positioning recording equipment perfectly. "How long have you lived here, Ms. Marin?" I asked, straightening up, my notepad now in hand. "Just over a year," she replied, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. "I moved in last May after my divorce." "And the whispering, when did that start?" "About 3 weeks ago, just barely audible. I thought it might be the heating system or neighbors at first, but it wasn't consistent enough for mechanical sounds and too consistent for neighbors. I called for a forensics team and asked Eleanor to pack an overnight bag. She couldn't stay here, not with that hole in her wall and the unknown person who had created it potentially watching or waiting to return for their recorder. The building manager arrived as we were leaving, a heavy-set man named Donovan with perpetually damp palms and an eager-to-please manner that immediately struck me as performative. "This is terrible, just terrible," he repeated, wringing his hands as I explained the situation in measured terms. "Nothing like this has ever happened at Pine Creek." "I'll need access to the adjacent units," I told him, "and information on anyone who's had access to Ms. Marin's apartment, maintenance requests, previous tenants, master key holders." Of course," he nodded vigorously. "Though the unit behind Ms. Marin's wall is vacant right now, has been for about 2 months. Previous tenant was a quiet older gentleman, lived there maybe 3 years. I can get you his information." The vacant apartment told its own story when we entered. Unlike the rest of the building with its beige carpeting and cream walls, this unit had been meticulously renovated, new hardwood floors matching Eleanor's apartment, freshly painted walls, updated fixtures. The kind of renovations normally reserved for units about to be listed at higher rent. "When did these renovations happen?" I asked Donovan, whose nervous energy seemed to intensify in this space. "Just after Mr. Lentz moved out," he replied, eyes darting around the room rather than meeting mine. "Company policy, we refresh units between tenants." "All units get hardwood floors and premium paint jobs?" I asked, noting how the renovation seemed concentrated in the bedroom that shared a wall with Eleanor's. "Well, no," he admitted. "This was a special case. Mr. Landry, the owner, he likes to upgrade select units as showcases for potential tenants. The forensics team worked methodically in both apartments while I interviewed other residents in the building. No one had noticed anything unusual. No strangers coming and going from the vacant unit. No maintenance workers staying longer than expected. The perfect anonymity of an average apartment complex had provided perfect cover. The digital recorder was our most promising lead. Carefully bagged and tagged, it went straight to our tech team. When the results came back the next day, they only deepened the mystery. The device contained hundreds of hours of recordings, all from Alina's bedroom, dating back nearly 6 months, long before she ever reported hearing whispers. More disturbing was what our tech found when examining the device itself. It had been modified to include a two-way communication feature, allowing someone to not only record, but also to speak through it remotely, to whisper through the wall while listening to Alina's reactions. The fingerprints on the recorder and acoustic foam matched no one in our system. The previous tenant of the vacant apartment, Mr. Lentz, had died of natural causes 2 months earlier in a nursing home across town, having moved out of Pine Creek nearly 3 months before that. Over the next several weeks, we pieced together what had happened through careful investigation. The building owner, James Landry, had indeed ordered special renovations to the vacant unit, but not through the regular maintenance crew. The contractor who installed the hardwood floors and painted the walls had no knowledge of the crawl space or the hole in the wall. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source, a night security guard who occasionally filled in at Pine Creek when the regular person called out sick. He remembered seeing someone using a key to enter the vacant apartment late at night several times over the past few months. Someone who matched the description of Donovan, the building manager. When confronted with this information and the mounting forensic evidence, Donovan broke down. Yes, he had created the listening post. Yes, he had been recording Alina for months. And yes, he had recently begun whispering to her through the wall while she slept, soft, nearly inaudible words designed not to wake her fully, but to filter into her dreams. His explanation was as disturbing as it was mundane. There was no elaborate motive, no complicated backstory. He had simply become obsessed with her orderly life, her quiet routines, the peaceful rhythm of her breathing as she slept. The whispering had started when simple observation no longer satisfied his compulsion. "I just wanted to be part of her life," he said during his confession, his voice hollow with the realization of what he had done. Just a voice in her head, something she couldn't forget. Alina Marin moved away from Pine Creek Apartments the week after Donovan's arrest. She left no forwarding address, told no one where she was going. I don't blame her. Some violations leave no visible marks but change everything about how you move through the world. Sometimes when I'm lying in bed at night, in that space between wakefulness and sleep, I find myself listening for whispers. I wonder if Alina does the same, if she still pulls her bed away from the wall sometimes, just to check, if she'll ever again know the peace of undisturbed sleep. The case file sits closed on my desk now, justice served in the most technical sense. Donovan received a 5-year sentence for stalking, breaking and entering, an invasion of privacy, charges that somehow seem inadequate for stealing someone's sense of safety in their most vulnerable moments. I still think about the recorder sometimes, still running, still collecting the quiet sounds of someone else's life, storing them for a listener who had no right to hear them. The patient dedication of the obsessed, the methodical violation of privacy through nothing more than a small, perfect circle in the wall. And I wonder how many people are out there right now, ears pressed to metaphorical walls, collecting the pieces of lives that don't belong to them, whispering words that were never invited, becoming voices in dreams that should have remained private. In the silence of my own bedroom, I sometimes find myself listening a bit too carefully to the ordinary creaks and sighs of my house settling, wondering if somewhere behind some wall I've never thought to check, a red light is blinking steadily in the darkness. Still recording. Story 3, the photo was of her and her sister as kids, smiling on their front porch. But when she scanned it to her laptop, a third face appeared in the doorway behind them, not a smudge, a person. And every time she opened the file, the figure looked closer. I remember the first time Sarah Bennett showed me that photograph. It was a mild October evening, the kind where amber streetlights melt into the fog, creating halos of diffused light. The case files lay spread across my desk, each manila folder containing fragments of a story that refused coherence. My office smelled of coffee gone cold and the faint mustiness of old paper. Outside, occasional car tires whispered against wet pavement. "Detective Mercer," she had said, her voice steady but thin, like a thread pulled taut. "I need you to look at this." Sarah was 32, with dark hair that fell just past her shoulders and eyes that carried the weight of prolonged unease. Not fear, not yet, but the persistent discomfort of something fundamental shifting out of place. She placed her laptop on my desk and turned it toward me. The screen's glow cast shadows across her face. "This is me and my sister Claire," she explained, pointing to two young girls, perhaps 8 and 10, sitting on wooden porch steps. Summer of 1998, 2 weeks before my sister disappeared. I leaned forward, studying the image. Two children with identical smiles, wearing the casual summer clothes of the late 90s. Behind them, a modest 2-story house with white clapboard siding and a screened door. And there, in the shadowed rectangle of the doorway, something else, someone else. "I found this print when clearing out my mother's house after she passed," Sarah continued. Her fingers tapped a slow rhythm against her thigh. "I scanned it to preserve it. That's when I noticed." The face in the doorway was indistinct but unmistakably human. A pale oval with suggestion of features, positioned where no one had been standing when the photo was taken, according to Sarah's memory. "And you're certain no one was there?" I asked, my pen hovering over my notepad, leaving the faintest ink dot where it touched paper. "Detective, I've spent 27 years trying to remember every detail of the days before Claire vanished. There was no one else at the house that day except our mother, who took the picture." Sarah's gaze didn't waver, and in the original print, that doorway is empty, just shadow. I nodded, making a note. The digital manipulation of photographs wasn't unusual in cases like this. Grieving relatives sometimes received messages that played into their need for closure. But Sarah Bennett didn't strike me as someone caught in delusion. Her posture was too controlled, her eyes too clear. "And you said something about the figure moving." Sarah clicked through several files on her computer, opening versions of the same image saved on different dates. "I scan old photos as a hobby. It's therapeutic," she explained. "I always save the original file, then make a copy for editing. I noticed it first a month ago, and I've opened the file every few days since." She lined up the windows side by side. "Look." I leaned closer, feeling the cool air from the desk fan brush against my face. In the earliest scan, the figure was a suggestion, a partial face visible in the doorway's shadow. In the next, saved 10 days later, it seemed to have shifted slightly forward. In the most recent, it was unmistakably more defined, the outline of shoulders now visible, the face closer to the threshold of the door. "Has anyone else had access to your computer?" I asked the obvious question. "No, I live alone. The files are password protected and I'm the administrator." She closed the laptop, her movements deliberate. "Detective Mercer, I wouldn't be here if I thought this was a prank or a glitch. Something is happening with this image, and I think it's connected to Claire." I nodded again, sensing the weight of her words. 27 years was a long time for a case to remain open, for a family to remain broken. Claire Bennett's disappearance had been before my time on the force, but I knew the outlines. 10-year-old girl walked to the corner store, never came home. No witnesses, no body, no closure. "I'll need copies of all the files," I said, sliding a department thumb drive across the desk. "And I'd like to see the original photograph." Sarah reached into her bag and produced a small photo album with a cracked leather cover. The physical photograph sat in its plastic sleeve, worn at the edges from years of handling. I slipped on a pair of nitrile gloves and carefully removed it. The porch, the girls, the summer day frozen in Kodak color, and the doorway empty, just as Sarah had claimed. 3 days later, I found myself in the archives basement of our precinct. The air was dry and still, with that particular silence of spaces designed to preserve rather than welcome. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, making the room feel hermetically sealed from the world above. The Bennett case files, 3 boxes worth, sat on the metal table before me. The first box contained the initial investigation files, standard procedures followed with textbook precision, leading nowhere. Claire had last been seen at Marrow's corner store buying a candy bar and a magazine. The clerk remembered her. The security camera had captured her leaving. Then nothing, no trace along the 4-block walk home. The second box held follow-up investigations, interviews with neighbors, school friends, known offenders in the area. All roads led to dead ends. A bloodhound had tracked her scent from the store to the intersection of Maple and Pine before losing it completely. Theories about vehicles, abductions, runaway scenarios, all explored, none confirmed. The third box was thinner than the others, containing periodic case reviews and the few lights that had emerged over the decades. A similar disappearance 2 counties over in 2003, a deathbed confession in 2011 that proved false, and a small envelope I hadn't expected, photographs from the Bennett home, collected during the initial investigation. I spread these photos across the table under the unforgiving archive lights, family portraits, school pictures, holiday gatherings, and several of the house itself, documented as part of the scene processing. Exterior shots of the modest white house with its wooden porch, interior rooms photographed with police precision. One caught my attention, the front entryway, shot from the living room, showing the inside of the same door visible in Sarah's childhood photo. Something about the doorframe made me reach for my magnifying glass. There, almost invisible in the grain of the wood, was a series of small notches, height markings measuring the growth of children over years. Next to each line, initials and dates were faintly penciled in. CB 8597, CB 2 1498, SB 52198. And then, almost imperceptible, a fourth mark above the others, TB 73098. TB, not Claire Bennett, not Sarah Bennett. I pulled out my phone and called the public records office. 20 minutes and one favor called in later, I had my answer. The Bennett house had been purchased by Linda Bennett, a single mother, in 1992. Previously, it had belonged to the Taylor family for nearly 40 years. The archive's computer was ancient but functional. I logged into our database and searched for any cases connected to the Taylor name and that address. One result appeared. Theodore Taylor, reported missing July 31st, 1978, exactly 20 years before Claire's disappearance to the day. Theodore Teddy Taylor had been 14 when he vanished, last seen by his parents when he went to bed on July 30th. By morning his bed was empty, the front door unlocked, no signs of struggle, no evidence of where he had gone. The case had gone cold within months. I returned to Sarah's digital images, looking at them with new understanding. The figure in the doorway wasn't just any face, it had the undefined features of adolescence, a boy on the edge of becoming a young man. That evening I drove to the old Bennett house. Sarah had mentioned her mother's passing, which meant the house likely stood empty. The neighborhood had aged but retained its middle-class dignity, trees a little taller, sidewalks a little more cracked, but essentially unchanged since the photos I'd studied. The house itself was dark, a for sale sign swinging gently in the front yard. I parked across the street and simply observed for a while, listening to the occasional car passing by, watching a neighbor walking his dog cast a curious glance my way. The porch where the girls had sat for their photograph was visible under the glow of a street light. The front door, the threshold in question, was obscured in shadow. I wasn't sure what I expected to find, but something had drawn me here, the same instinct that had made me a detective, the need to place myself in the physical space where events had unfolded. I approached the house slowly, my footsteps crunching on the gravel pathway. The porch steps creaked under my weight, the sound impossibly loud in the quiet evening. Standing before the door, I felt a sudden chill that had nothing to do with the night air. The door itself was newer than in the photographs, replaced sometime in the intervening years, but the frame was original. I ran my fingers along the inside edge where the height markings would be, hidden now under layers of paint. Something made me turn around to look out from the doorway rather than into it. From this vantage point, I could see the entire street, every approaching path to the house. A perfect watching place, a perfect waiting place. The investigation that followed unfolded slowly, like a photograph gradually revealing its details. The concrete slab under the porch, poured in 1979, shortly after Teddy Taylor's disappearance. The unexplained noises that neighbors had reported over the years, always dismissed as settling foundations or nocturnal wildlife. The pattern of disappearances, not just Claire and Teddy, but 3 other children over 5 decades, each 20 years apart, each vanishing without a trace. We brought in ground-penetrating radar. The readings were inconclusive. We interviewed former neighbors, aging memories offering fragments that alone meant nothing, together suggested everything. We obtained a warrant. On the 7th day of excavation, they found the first remains. Not under the concrete as expected, but within the walls themselves, in a space between the living room and what had once been a closet, a space that didn't appear on any blueprint, a void where no void should exist. The remains were old, decades of dust and darkness reducing them to a fragile archaeology of bones and fabric remnants. Dental records confirmed what we already suspected. Theodore Taylor had never left his home. More carefully, the excavation continued, revealing 4 sets of remains in total. Claire Bennett was among them. But we never found the 5th child, the one who would have disappeared in 1938, continuing the pattern backward. Instead, we found something else, a small box containing a silver pendant, newspaper clippings about the construction of the house in 1937, and a daguerreotype photograph showing a severe-looking man standing in front of the newly built home. On the back, written in faded ink, Edward Marrow, 1937. the same surname as the corner store where Claire had last been seen. Sarah Bennett identified her sister's locket among the recovered items. I was there when she held it in her gloved hand, her composure finally breaking as she traced its tarnished surface. "Claire never took this off," she whispered. "Never." Later that night, alone in my apartment, I opened my laptop to write my case notes. Out of habit, I checked the folder containing copies of Sarah's scanned photographs, the ones showing the mysterious third face emerging from the doorway. The most recent copy, the one I had made myself just that morning, was different now. The figure in the doorway was gone, leaving only the two sisters and the empty threshold behind them. I stared at it for a long time, the blue light of the screen the only illumination in my darkened living room. Sometimes I think about what Edward Marrow built into that house, not just walls and floors, but something hungry that learned to wait. Sometimes I wonder about that pattern of 20 years, a cycle of patience, of growth, of appetite. Sometimes, late at night when sleep evades me, I open that digital image again. The doorway remains empty now, but I can't shake the feeling that somewhere in some other photograph I haven't yet seen, a face is slowly emerging from shadow, watching, waiting for the moment to step fully into the frame. Story 4, she heard it at night, a slow, rhythmic sound coming from the ceiling, like someone exhaling. She climbed up to check the air duct and found a piece of cloth wedged in the vent. Wrapped inside, a baby's sock and a Polaroid of someone sleeping in her bed. I remember the first time I stepped into Marion Reeves' apartment. It was early April, when spring hadn't quite chased away winter's lingering chill. The building was one of those pre-war structures in the older part of town, solid brick exterior, high ceilings inside, the kind of place that whispers stories if you listen closely enough. The hallway smelled faintly of lemon polish and old carpeting as I followed the property manager to apartment 4B. She was a quiet tenant, the manager said, keys jingling softly in his hand. Paid rent on time, kept to herself. He paused before unlocking the door. Never would have thought something like this would happen here. The apartment was untouched since the police had finished processing it 3 days prior. Afternoon light filtered through partially drawn blinds, casting long shadows across the hardwood floor. Everything appeared ordinary, a modest living room with a small blue sofa, a coffee table stacked with architecture magazines, a kitchen with a single unwashed mug in the sink. Nothing immediately betrayed the reason I was there. I stood in the center of the living room, letting the space speak to me as I always do when beginning an investigation. My editor at the True Investigator had assigned me this case because of my attention to detail, my ability to notice the things others miss. The police had classified it as a straightforward breaking and entering case with stalking elements, but something didn't add up in their report. "Mind if I look around alone for a bit?" I asked the manager. He nodded, clearly uncomfortable being there. "Take your time, I'll wait in the hallway." Once alone, I moved slowly through the apartment, noting the precise order of things. Marion Reeves, 34, architectural designer, lived a methodical life according to her belongings. Books aligned perfectly on shelves, clothes in her closet arranged by color and season, a calendar on her refrigerator with appointments written in neat, precise handwriting. The bedroom was small but thoughtfully arranged, a queen-sized bed with a gray duvet, a nightstand with a lamp, a glass of water, and a well-worn paperback mystery novel. On the wall opposite the bed was a simple desk where she presumably worked from home occasionally. Above it, almost unnoticeable at first glance, was the air vent. It was a standard rectangular HVAC vent positioned near the ceiling. Nothing remarkable about it, except for the chair positioned directly beneath it, slightly askew, as though hastily returned to its place. That small imperfection in an otherwise perfectly ordered apartment caught my attention immediately. I moved the chair and climbed up to examine the vent more closely. The screws appeared to have been removed and replaced recently. Faint scratch marks surrounded them where a tool had slipped. Carefully, I removed the cover and peered inside with my phone's flashlight. The beam illuminated nothing unusual at first, just the expected dark metal ductwork. But as I angled the light to peer deeper, I noticed something lodged about 2 feet in. Using the pen from my pocket, I carefully pulled it toward me, a folded piece of fabric wrapped around something small and solid. My heart beat steadily but with heightened awareness as I unfolded what turned out to be a handkerchief, monogrammed with the initials DL. Inside was exactly what Marion had described in her police report. A tiny infant sock, pale blue and barely worn, and a Polaroid photograph. The photo showed Marion herself, asleep in the very bed behind me. The timestamp in the corner dated 3 weeks before she discovered the items. The chill that ran through me had nothing to do with the apartment's temperature. Someone had been watching her, entering her space while she slept, documenting their intrusions, and then deliberately leaving evidence for her to find. I documented everything with my camera before carefully replacing the items exactly as I'd found them. The police had apparently missed this during their initial search, focusing instead on more obvious entry points like windows and doors. Back in the living room, I reviewed my notes and the case file I'd brought with me. Marion Reeves had lived in the building for 4 years. No romantic relationships noted in the police interview. Few visitors according to neighbors. Her statement described hearing breathing from the vent for several nights before investigating it herself. She'd immediately packed a bag and gone to stay with her sister after finding the disturbing items. The police report included interviews with other tenants. No one reported seeing strangers in the building. The security camera in the lobby had been non-functional for months, a fact that someone might have known and exploited. As daylight began to fade, casting the apartment in a blue-gray twilight, I sat at Marion's desk and opened her building's floor plan that the property manager had provided. Apartment 4B connected to the main air shaft that ran through the entire building. The apartment directly above belonged to a retired couple who had been away on a cruise when the incidents occurred. The apartment directly below belonged to Daniel Lasky, a 42-year-old IT consultant who had moved in 8 months ago. DL the same initials as the monogrammed handkerchief. I thanked the property manager and left, but didn't go far. Instead, I sat in my car across the street, watching the building's entrance as residents returned home from work. At 6:37 p.m., a man matching Lasky's description from the tenant records entered the building. Average height, thin build, carrying a laptop bag over one shoulder. The next morning, I arranged an interview with Lasky under the pretense of writing an article about remote work trends. He agreed to meet me at a coffee shop 2 blocks from the apartment building. Daniel Lasky appeared unremarkable at first glance, neatly dressed in business casual attire, articulate when speaking about his work, making appropriate eye contact. Nothing about him suggested someone who would engage in such disturbing behavior. But midway through our conversation, as he reached for his coffee cup, I noticed a small scar on his right wrist, surgical in appearance, recent. "Mind if I ask about your work before becoming a consultant?" I inquired casually. "I was in facility maintenance for several years," he replied. "Commercial HVAC systems mostly." Someone who would know their way around air ducts and ventilation systems. Someone who would understand how sound travels through them. When our interview concluded, I thanked him and watched as he returned to the apartment building. Then I called Detective Sarah Mercer, who had been assigned to Marion's case. The handkerchief tested positive for trace amounts of chloroform, Detective Mercer told me 3 days later as we met in her office. And we found a hidden entrance to the building's main air shaft in Lasky's apartment, concealed behind a false wall in his closet. He'd created a way to access the entire ventilation system without leaving his apartment. I looked through the photographs the police had taken during their search of Lasky's apartment. One showed a collection of items neatly arranged in a drawer, a baby sock identical to the one found in the vent, except in pink. 3 more Polaroid photos of Marion sleeping. A woman's hairbrush with strands of dark hair that presumably belonged to Marion. And most disturbing of all, a detailed journal describing the sounds of her daily routines. When she showered, when she made phone calls, when she turned off her lights at night. He kept track of her for months, the detective said, her voice quiet. Used the vents not just to watch her, but to listen to her most private moments, and then he wanted her to know she was being watched. They arrested Daniel Lasky that afternoon. During questioning, he remained eerily calm, speaking only to request an attorney. The investigation expanded to include his previous residences, revealing a pattern. In each building where he had lived over the past decade, female tenants had reported unexplained noises, missing personal items, and in 2 cases, break-ins where nothing of monetary value was taken. Marion Reeves never returned to her apartment. I interviewed her 6 months later at a cafe in another city, where she had relocated and taken a new job. I still check the vents in my new place, she told me, wrapping her hands around her mug. Every night before I go to sleep, and sometimes, even though I know it's impossible, I still think I hear breathing. As I drive home after dark now, I often find myself looking up at apartment buildings, at the rows of windows illuminated from within. I think about all the private moments unfolding behind those windows, and about the thin barriers that separate our most vulnerable states from those who might wish to observe them. And sometimes in my own home, in those quiet moments between wakefulness and sleep, I catch myself listening, really listening, to the subtle sounds of air moving through vents, wondering if it's just the building breathing or something else entirely. The case of the air vent that breathed was officially closed. Daniel Lasky was convicted on multiple counts of breaking and entering, stalking, and voyeurism. But the true horror of his crimes wasn't in any dramatic act of violence. It was in the slow, patient violation of the sacred boundary between public and private life, the methodical transformation of a sanctuary into a stage where Marion performed unknowingly for an audience of 1. And that's a violation from which it's much harder to recover than a broken lock or a stolen possession. Because once you realize that the walls around you aren't solid, that someone has been breathing in the spaces between, you never quite feel alone again, even when you are. Story 5, she came home from work to find a full grocery bag on her kitchen table. Eggs, bread, her favorite snacks. She hadn't been shopping. No one had a key. Taped to the loaf of bread, a receipt with her name typed on it and nothing else. I remember the file landing on my desk on a Tuesday morning. The kind of morning where fog clings to the windows of the precinct and the coffee machine hums just a little too loudly in the corner. Detective Sarah Mercer's case had been passed between 3 different detectives before it reached me, not because it was particularly complex, but because no one could quite decide if it was a case at all. The manila folder was thin, just a few papers, a statement, and a single photograph paperclipped to the inside. The image showed exactly what had been described, a paper grocery bag sitting in the center of a kitchen table. Ordinary in every way, except for its presence in a locked apartment where no one should have been. I ran my finger along the edge of the photo, feeling the slight texture of the glossy paper. Sarah Mercer, 34, lived alone in a second-floor apartment in Oakwood Heights. No roommates, no pets, no significant other with a spare key. Just Sarah and her routines, which apparently someone else had been studying with uncomfortable precision. The contents of the bag were listed in the report. 1 loaf of sourdough bread, the brand she always bought. A carton of free-range eggs, brown, not white. A jar of almond butter, crunchy, her preference. A bag of kettle-cooked sea salt potato chips and 2 Honeycrisp apples. These weren't random items. They were her regular purchases, the exact brands she favored, the specific type of apple she liked most. I closed the folder and leaned back in my chair, listening to its familiar creak. The ceiling fan above me turned lazily, pushing the stale air around the room without really cooling anything. Sarah had called it in immediately, after backing out of her apartment and waiting in the hallway for officers to arrive. They'd found no signs of forced entry, no fingerprints aside from hers, no witnesses who had seen anyone entering or leaving. The receipt was the detail that lingered with me as I drove to meet her the following day. Just her name, Sarah, typed out, not handwritten, on the narrow strip of thermal paper. No store information, no items listed, no price. Just her name, as if announcing that someone knew exactly who she was. Sarah opened her door cautiously when I arrived. She had dark circles under her eyes, and her apartment smelled strongly of freshly brewed coffee. The kitchen was visible from where I stood, a small, neat space with white cabinets and a round wooden table pushed against the wall, the table where the grocery bag had been placed. "I haven't been sleeping well," she admitted, gesturing for me to sit on her small gray couch. "I keep checking the locks. I even put a chair under the doorknob at night." I nodded, understanding her fear. Someone had been in her space, her sanctuary, and had left a message that said very clearly, "I know you. I know what you like. I can reach you whenever I want." "Tell me about your routine," I said softly, pulling out my notebook. The pages made a gentle whisper as they turned. "Walk me through a typical week." Sarah's life was structured, predictable. She worked as an editor at a small publishing house downtown. Monday through Friday, she left her apartment at 7:45 a.m. and returned around 6:30 p.m. Grocery shopping on Sunday afternoons, usually at the West Side Market 6 blocks from her apartment. She went to the same coffee shop every Saturday morning, attended a yoga class on Wednesday evenings, and occasionally met friends for dinner or drinks. "Do you ever feel like someone's watching you?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral, not wanting to feed her fears. She paused, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee mug. "Not before this, but now. Now I see faces in crowds that seem familiar, but I can't place them. I wonder about the barista who knows my order without asking, the cashier at the grocery store who remembers my preference for paper bags instead of plastic." I wrote these details down, my pen moving slowly across the page. There was something intimate about this case, no violence, no explicit threat, just the quiet invasion of someone's private life. Over the next few weeks, I methodically traced Sarah's routines. I sat in her regular coffee shop, watching the patrons and staff. I followed her usual path to work, noting anyone who seemed to pay too much attention to her passing figure. I reviewed security footage from the West Side Market, scanning for faces that appeared too often, for eyes that lingered too long on Sarah as she selected her produce. Nothing happened for 17 days. Then Sarah called me at 10:38 p.m., her voice tight with controlled panic. "There's another bag," she said simply. When I arrived, she was standing in her small living room, arms wrapped around herself despite the warmth of the evening. On her coffee table sat another paper grocery bag. This time the contents were different. A small potted plant, a peace lily, a box of chamomile tea, and a book of crossword puzzles. "I just went out to take the trash down to the dumpster," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was gone for 3 minutes, maybe 4. The door was locked when I came back." I carefully examined the bag and its contents. Again, the items showed intimate knowledge of Sarah's preferences. She had mentioned to me in passing that she'd been thinking about getting a houseplant. She drank chamomile tea before bed to help her sleep. The crossword puzzles were the exact level of difficulty she enjoyed, challenging but not impossible. Taped to the cover of the puzzle book was another receipt. This time it had 2 words, "Sarah sleeps." A chill settled over the room as I bagged the items for evidence. Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she made herself a cup of coffee she didn't need. "I can't stay here," she said finally. That night she packed a small bag and went to stay with her sister across town. I stationed an officer outside her apartment building and had the locks changed the next morning. The building superintendent gave us access to the security footage from the hallway camera, but it showed nothing unusual during the time frame when the second bag must have been delivered. The lab found no usable fingerprints, no DNA, no trace evidence on any of the items. The receipts had been printed on a common thermal printer, the type used in thousands of stores across the city. The items themselves had been purchased at different locations, the plant from a garden center on the north side, the tea from a specialty shop downtown, the puzzle book from a chain bookstore in the mall. Days passed, turning into weeks. Sarah stayed with her sister, returning to her apartment only during daylight hours to collect more clothes or check her mail. I continued the investigation, interviewing neighbors, checking for similar cases in other precincts, looking for patterns that might point to our invisible intruder. Then, exactly 1 month after the first bag appeared, I received a text message from Sarah at 3:17 p.m. "There's something at my sister's apartment." I drove there immediately, my windshield wipers pushing away a light autumn rain that had just begun to fall. The sound of water hitting the roof of my car created a rhythmic backdrop to my racing thoughts. When I arrived, Sarah was standing on the covered porch of her sister's small house. Her sister was still at work, unaware of what had been delivered. On the welcome mat sat a single paper grocery bag, already darkening with moisture from the rain. Inside the bag was a framed photograph of Sarah sleeping on her sister's couch, clearly taken from outside through the living room window. Taped to the glass of the frame was another receipt with 3 words, "Sarah can't hide." I called for backup and had officers search the area immediately, but the rain had washed away any footprints or evidence that might have been left behind. Sarah's sister's house was in a quiet residential neighborhood with large yards between homes, providing ample cover for someone to approach unnoticed. That evening, as Sarah and her sister packed to relocate to a hotel under an assumed name, I sat in my car watching the house. The rain had intensified, creating rivulets down my windows and distorting the view of the street beyond. I wondered if our unseen observer was out there somewhere, perhaps watching me as I watched for them. The investigation shifted after that. This was no longer about an unusual break-in. It was about a methodical stalker with an unknown objective. We set up surveillance cameras around Sarah's apartment building and her workplace. I interviewed her colleagues, former boyfriends, friends who might have become enemies. We combed through her social media accounts, looking for anyone showing excessive interest in her daily activities. 2 more weeks passed with no new deliveries. Sarah began to breathe a little easier, though she continued to stay at the hotel, maintaining her isolation from familiar places and routines. Then on a quiet Sunday afternoon, as I was reviewing case notes at my desk, my phone rang. It was Sarah. "I think it's over," she said, her voice steadier than I'd heard it in weeks. "I need to tell you something." We met at a small cafe I'd never been to before, well away from both our usual haunts. Sarah looked different. Her hair was shorter, dyed a darker shade of brown. She wore glasses I hadn't seen before. "I received a letter at the hotel," she said, sliding an envelope across the table to me. Inside was a single sheet of paper with typed text that read, "You passed the test. Welcome to the program. Instructions to follow." Below that was a symbol, a circle with a line through it, and what appeared to be a series of random numbers and letters. "What is this?" I asked, though something in her expression told me she already knew. Sarah took a deep breath. "Before I was an editor, I applied to a government program, something in intelligence. I went through several interviews, but then never heard back. I assumed I hadn't made the cut." I stared at her, the pieces slowly shifting in my mind. "You're saying this was some kind of recruitment test?" She nodded slowly. "They were testing how I'd respond to surveillance, to the psychological pressure. They were watching both of us, seeing how thoroughly you'd investigate, how well I'd cope with the stress." I sat back in my chair, feeling the weight of realization. All those weeks of investigation, the fear, the disruption to Sarah's life, all engineered as an elaborate assessment of her psychological resilience and problem-solving abilities. "What will you do?" I asked finally. Sarah looked out the window at the people passing by, each lost in their own world, unaware of how easily that world could be manipulated. "I don't know yet," she said quietly, "but I think I want to find out what's behind that door they've opened." I never saw Sarah Mercer again after that day. Her apartment was cleared out the following week. Her sister told me she'd taken a job opportunity overseas, something in publishing, she thought, though the details were vague. The case file remains in my drawer, technically unsolved. Sometimes, on quiet mornings when fog clings to the windows of the precinct, I take it out and look at the photograph of that first grocery bag sitting innocently on a kitchen table. I wonder about Sarah, about where she is now, about what she might be doing. And sometimes, when I come home after a long day, I find myself pausing before I enter my apartment, listening for any sound that might suggest someone has been there, arranging things just so, leaving their silent message that they know exactly who I am. Story 6. I remember the weight of that old school desk as I dragged it from the stranger's driveway to my hatchback. The woman running the yard sale said it had been sitting in her basement since the 70s, a relic from when her husband taught at Oakwood Elementary. I liked its worn wooden surface, scarred with decades of pencil marks and board carvings. There was something comforting about objects with history. It wasn't until I got it home that I noticed one drawer was stuck, not locked, just resistant, the kind of stuck that comes from decades of disuse, where wood has swollen and contracted with seasonal changes until it forms a perfect seal against itself. I set it in the corner of my apartment, using it as a side table for my coffee as I graded papers in the evenings. I'm a high school English teacher myself, which made the desk feel like a kindred spirit of sorts. We were both vessels for the messy work of education. For 3 weeks I left that drawer alone. Sometimes my fingers would brush against its brass handle as I reached for my coffee, and I'd give it a gentle tug out of habit, but it remained steadfast in its refusal to open. I started to wonder what might be inside. Maybe nothing, maybe old chalk or paper clips, maybe a love note passed between students, confiscated and forgotten. On a rainy Sunday in October, I finally decided to address the drawer properly. The apartment was quiet except for the gentle patter of raindrops against my windows. I knelt before the desk with a butter knife and some WD-40, working the blade around the edges of the drawer where I could see the faintest seam. The wood resisted, then gave a soft groan as decades-old dust puffed out in a small cloud. I worked slowly, methodically, taking my time with each side of the drawer. There was something meditative about it, just me, the desk, and the rain outside providing a soothing soundtrack. After 20 minutes of gentle coaxing, I felt something give, not completely, but enough to know I was making progress. I set down the butter knife and wrapped my fingers around the brass handle, applying steady pressure. The drawer released with a sound that wasn't quite a creak, more like a sigh, as if the desk itself was relieved to finally relinquish what it had been holding for so long. Inside was a stack of detention slips, yellow carbon copies, the kind teachers would fill out when sending a student to the principal's office. They were arranged neatly, as if someone had placed them there with deliberate care. I lifted them out and settled back against the wall, spreading them on my lap like delicate artifacts. They were all dated April 16, 1974, all from Oakwood Elementary, all written in the same precise handwriting, thick blue ink from what must have been a fountain pen. Each slip documented a different infraction: disrupting class, fighting on playground, refusing to complete assignments, inappropriate language, stealing from teacher's desk. What made my skin prickle was the names. Every slip, and there were 12 in total, had been issued to a student with the same name. My name, Jennifer Miller. I've never been to Oakwood Elementary. I wasn't even born until 1985. And yet, here were these detention slips, dated more than a decade before my birth, all bearing my name. I spread the slips across my living room floor, arranging them chronologically by the time marked on each form. They told the story of a single day, from 8:15 a.m. when the first Jennifer Miller apparently refused to remove her hat in class, to 2:45 p.m. when the last Jennifer Miller was caught trying to leave school grounds without permission. The teacher's signature at the bottom of each form was crisp and authoritative: Edward Cahill. Sleep eluded me that night. I kept thinking about those detention slips and the coincidence that seemed too perfect to be genuine. The next morning, I called in sick to work and drove to the local library. The librarian directed me to their archive section, where they kept microfilm records of local newspapers and school yearbooks going back decades. I found the yearbook for Oakwood Elementary, 1973-1974. The pages were filled with black and white photos of children with bowl cuts and wide collars, and there he was, Edward Cahill, 5th grade teacher, gray at the temples, wire-rimmed glasses, stern expression. In the class photo beneath his portrait, I counted 23 children, not a single one named Jennifer Miller. Next, I checked the local newspaper archives. Scanning through April 1974, I found nothing unusual about Oakwood Elementary. No mention of strange occurrences, no reports of missing children. Nothing that would explain why a teacher would write detention slips for a student who didn't exist, or for multiple students who all shared my name. I expanded my search to surrounding months, and then I found it buried in the back pages of the February 13, 1974 edition. Local teacher's daughter missing. The article was brief. 12-year-old Jennifer Cahill, daughter of Oakwood Elementary teacher Edward Cahill, had failed to return home from a friend's house. Police were investigating. Subsequent articles revealed little progress in the search. By March, Jennifer Cahill's disappearance had been reduced to occasional mentions. By May, nothing at all. I sat back in my chair, the connection forming slowly in my mind. Edward Cahill. The detention slips dated 2 months after his daughter went missing. The same name repeated over and over, not my name exactly, but close. Jennifer Cahill, Jennifer Miller. That afternoon, I visited the county clerk's office. Public records showed that Edward Cahill had died in 1987. His wife, Margaret, had passed away just 3 years ago. They had no other children besides Jennifer. I found myself driving past Oakwood Elementary before heading home. The building had been renovated since the 70s, but the bones were the same. Children played in the schoolyard, their voices carrying on the autumn breeze. I wondered if they knew about the girl who had disappeared all those years ago, the daughter of a teacher who, in his grief, had filled out detention slips for a child who wasn't there. Or perhaps for a child he imagined everywhere. Back home, I stared at the school desk sitting innocently in my living room. I returned the detention slips to the drawer, but something else caught my eye, a small notch in the wood at the back of the compartment. I reached in and felt cool metal. With careful fingers, I extracted a small key, tarnished with age. A week later, I found myself at the storage facility listed in Margaret Cahill's estate documents. The manager was reluctant at first, but when I explained I'd purchased Edward's desk and found what might be a key to their old unit, he relented. That unit's been paid up for 20 years in advance, he told me. Prepayment was part of Mrs. Cahill's will. We've had no reason to open it. The key fit perfectly in the padlock. Inside the small storage room, cardboard boxes were stacked neatly against one wall. Each box was labeled in the same precise handwriting I'd seen on the detention slips. Jennifer's books, Jennifer's summer clothes, Jennifer's school projects. In the center of the room stood a child's school desk, identical to the one I'd purchased, except for one detail. Carved into its wooden surface was a name, Jennifer Cahill. I opened the single drawer of Jennifer's desk. Inside was a diary, its pink cover faded with age. I knew I shouldn't read it. This was someone's private thoughts, someone's child. But I felt drawn to it, compelled by some force I couldn't explain. The final entry was dated February 12, 1974, the day before Jennifer disappeared. Dad got so angry today when I said I didn't want to go to Oakwood anymore. He wouldn't listen when I tried to tell him about Mr. Miller and the things he says to me after class. Dad says Mr. Miller is his friend and I'm making things up. I'm scared to go back tomorrow. Maybe Mom will believe me. The diary slipped from my fingers. I turned to leave, but something made me look back at the storage room, at the carefully preserved memories of a girl who vanished at the desk that matched my own. And I wondered, whose memories was I preserving in my apartment? What connection existed between us across time? I never found answers about what happened to Jennifer Cahill. The missing persons case remains open but inactive. Mr. Miller, the teacher mentioned in her diary, died in 1982 with no investigation ever connecting him to her disappearance. Sometimes, late at night, I hear the drawer in my desk sliding open on its own, though when I check, it's always closed. And sometimes, when I'm grading papers at that desk, I swear I can feel someone watching over my shoulder, someone young, frightened, wanting nothing more than to be heard. I keep the detention slips in my desk drawer now. 12 identical names, 12 cries for help that went unheard. And though I've considered selling the desk many times, something always stops me. Maybe it's the thought that as long as I keep it, someone remembers Jennifer Cahill. Someone carries her story forward. And maybe that's all any of us can hope for in the end, that someone will keep our stories, even when we can no longer tell them ourselves. Story 7, it looked like debris at first, something dumped illegally off a trail. But as I stepped closer, I saw it was a white wooden crib, clean and perfectly assembled. Inside was a folded blanket, a pacifier, and a note. I changed my mind. The forest was quiet that morning, the kind of quiet that seems to absorb sound rather than merely lacking it. My footsteps on the pine needle floor were muffled, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. I remember the thin tendrils of mist still clinging to the ground, reluctant to surrender to the warming day. The air smelled of damp earth and pine sap, familiar, comforting scents that now seemed oddly discordant with what stood before me. I'm a park ranger at Blackwater State Forest. For 7 years, I've walked these trails, documented wildlife, assisted lost hikers, and occasionally cleaned up after careless visitors. But nothing in my training had prepared me for a pristine baby crib positioned deliberately in a small clearing, 20 yards from the main hiking path. The crib was expensive, solid wood with ornate carvings along the railings, not the kind of furniture one abandons lightly. The blanket inside was pale yellow, folded into a perfect square. The pacifier, light blue with a cartoon bear, lay atop it, and that note, written in flowing cursive on cream-colored stationery. 5 words that raised more questions than they answered. I radioed in my discovery, keeping my voice level despite the unease spreading through me. The dispatcher's voice crackled back, initially confused, then concerned. "Any sign of anything else?" she asked, her hesitation making clear what she was really asking. I scanned the area again, relief washing over me that there was no child, no evidence of anything more sinister than an abandoned piece of furniture. Within an hour, Detective Lauren Mathers from the County Sheriff's Department arrived. She was tall, with prematurely gray hair pulled back in a severe bun, her movements methodical as she photographed the scene. I stood back, watching as she slipped on latex gloves before touching anything. "How often do you patrol this section?" she asked without looking up, her voice carrying in the still air. "Every other day," I replied. "I was here Tuesday afternoon. This definitely wasn't here then." She nodded, carefully picking up the note with tweezers. "So it appeared sometime in the last 48 hours. She studied the handwriting. Female, right-handed, educated, expensive paper. She spoke more to herself than to me, her eyes narrowing slightly. Who changes their mind about a baby? The question hung in the cool morning air, unanswered. By afternoon, the crib had been carefully removed, the clearing processed for evidence. Tire tracks were discovered on a service road a quarter-mile away, unusual as that road was gated and locked, accessible only to park staff. The lock had been picked with skill that suggested professional knowledge. Days passed, the story made the local news, a human interest piece that generated concerned calls but few leads. Detective Mathers called me several times, her questions always precise, probing for details I might have forgotten. Had I noticed any vehicles parked nearby, any visitors to the park acting strangely, any reports of missing children? The DNA tests from the pacifier and blanket revealed nothing in any database. The crib's manufacturer confirmed it was purchased online 3 months prior, paid for with a prepaid credit card. The handwriting analysis suggested a woman in her 30s, educated, under emotional duress but not panicking. a woman who made a deliberate choice. 2 weeks after my discovery, I received a call from Mathers asking me to meet her at the station. The small interview room felt too warm, the fluorescent lights casting everyone in an unflattering pallor. Mathers slid a folder across the table to me. "Patricia Winslow," she said, tapping a photograph of a woman with auburn hair and tired eyes. 34, English professor at the community college, reported missing by her department chair when she didn't show up for the second week of classes. I studied the photo, trying to imagine this woman carrying a crib into the woods. Any connection to the park? Her dissertation was on transcendentalist literature, Thoreau Emerson, Nature as Spiritual Refuge. Mather's voice remained neutral, but I caught the subtle implication. Her apartment was cleared out. Neighbors say a moving company came, but she never mentioned moving. The movers were paid in cash. Another photo slid across the table, a nursery painted soft green with woodland creatures stenciled on the walls. A matching white crib was conspicuously absent from the room. "Was she pregnant?" I asked, the pieces trying to align in my mind. "Not recently," Mathers replied, "but we found adoption paperwork in her desk at the college. She was in the final stages of adopting an infant from overseas. The agency called her 3 weeks ago. The birth mother had decided to keep the baby." The words from the note echoed in my head. I changed my mind. Mathers continued, her voice softer now. "We found receipts for the crib, the blanket, everything, and a journal." She hesitated. She wrote about dreaming of motherhood for years, about preparing the nursery, about how the forest behind the college was where she went to think, to plan, to imagine her future child. Understanding began to dawn, heavy and sad. She wasn't abandoning a baby. She was abandoning the idea of one. Mathers nodded slowly. "We think she left town to start over. The crib in the woods was her way of letting go." The case file remains open, technically. Patricia Winslow's credit card was used once at a bus station in another state. The security footage shows a woman with newly cut hair and different clothes, carrying a single suitcase. She looked different, lighter somehow, despite the obvious weight of loss on her shoulders. Sometimes when I patrol that section of forest, I stop at the clearing. There's nothing there now to indicate what was found, no marker or disturbance, just trees and undergrowth and the quiet of the forest. But I can still see it in my mind, that pristine white crib among the browns and greens of the natural world, a monument to a dream someone needed to bury before they could move on. The forest keeps its secrets well. It holds our abandoned hopes without judgment, allows us space to leave behind what we can no longer carry. I often wonder where Patricia is now, if she found peace after her ritual in the woods. I hope so. Some mysteries don't need solving. Some are simply stories we need to witness and respect before continuing down our own paths through the trees. Story 8. I remember the autumn light that day, how it slanted through the bay windows of the Victorian house we just purchased, casting long shadows across the worn wooden floorboards. My husband and the kids were out getting groceries, leaving me alone to explore our new home, to feel its history beneath my fingertips. Old houses speak if you listen closely enough. This one had been whispering since we first walked through the door. I was in what would become my office, a small room with faded floral wallpaper at the front of the house, when I felt my wedding ring slip from my finger. I watched, almost in slow motion, as it rolled across the uneven floor and disappeared between two planks with a soft, metallic ping. The sound echoed in the empty room. Kneeling down, I could just make out the glint of gold in the darkness between the boards. I pressed my cheek against the cool wood, feeling the subtle give of age beneath me. The ring had fallen too deep to reach with my fingers. I would need to pry up the board. In the basement, I found an old crowbar among the previous owner's abandoned tools. The metal was cold in my hands, heavy with purpose. Back upstairs, I wedged it carefully between the planks, feeling resistance, then surrender as the wood creaked and lifted. The dust that rose smelled ancient, a musty, forgotten scent that tickled the back of my throat. As the board came loose, something white caught my eye. Not my ring, but something small and wrapped in what looked like gauze, yellowed with age. I set the crowbar aside and reached for it, curious. The gauze unwound easily between my fingers, revealing something small and hard. A tooth, a child's tooth to be precise, small with its root still intact. Not a natural loss then, it had been pulled. My breath caught as I noticed something else writing on the gauze. Faded blue ink in a tight, meticulous script. Emily Wilson, age 7, 1954. I sat back on my heels, the tooth resting in my palm. Why would someone wrap a child's tooth and hide it beneath the floorboards? I leaned forward again, peering into the darkness, and saw more white, more gauze. I reached in and pulled out another small package, identical to the first. Timothy Gaines, age 8, 1955. My fingers trembled slightly as I reached in again. Another package and another, a collection of teeth, each one carefully wrapped and labeled with a name, an age, a date. Dozens of them, arranged in neat rows beneath the floorboard. The most recent was from 1972. I sat there surrounded by these small fragments of forgotten children, feeling the weight of something terrible settling around me. These weren't baby teeth that had fallen out naturally. Most were molars, some had fillings. All had been deliberately removed. The house had belonged to Dr. Harold Mercer before us. A retired dentist, the realtor had said, a widower who had moved to a nursing home after living here for nearly 40 years, respected in the community, quiet, kept to himself. I remembered now there had been a small room off the basement, a room with a drain in the center of the concrete floor. The realtor had called it a dark room for developing photographs, but I'd seen the faint stains around that drain. I'd noticed the hooks in the ceiling that I'd assumed were for hanging wet prints to dry. My fingers moved to my phone. I should call someone, the police, my husband, but I hesitated, looking down at the small white collection before me. Each tooth represented a child, a visit, a moment of trust betrayed. I gathered the teeth carefully, placing them back where I had found them, and reached for my laptop. The local newspaper archives might have something. Missing children reports from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. School records, anything. Hours passed as I searched. The shadows in the room grew longer. The house settled around me with creaks and sighs that now seemed less like the natural sounds of an old building and more like secrets struggling to surface. I found nothing about missing children, but I did find mentions of Dr. Mercer, a community leader, president of the local Rotary Club, volunteer at the Children's Hospital, photos of him surrounded by smiling children at charity events. His dental practice had specialized in pediatric dentistry. The front door opened downstairs, startling me. My husband called up, his voice echoing through the empty rooms. The kids' laughter followed, bright and innocent. I closed my laptop and stood, suddenly aware of how cold the room had grown. "I'll be right down," I called back, my voice oddly steady. That night, after everyone was asleep, I returned to the room. I knelt beside the loose floorboard and removed it completely. Beneath the teeth was a small leather journal, its cover cracked with age. I took it to the window, where moonlight provided just enough illumination to read by. The journal wasn't what I expected. No confessions of a killer, no twisted justifications. Instead, it contained detailed dental records, notes on procedures performed, payments received, but there was something unusual. Many entries noted treatments performed after hours in the home office. Children from the orphanage on the edge of town, mostly. Children without parents to question why they were being taken to a dentist's home instead of his practice. I flipped to the final pages, dated shortly before Dr. Mercer retired. The handwriting had grown shakier, but the meticulous attention to detail remained. The last entry simply read, "Final extraction complete. Collection preserved for posterity. When they find them, they'll understand my contribution to science." Science, the word sat heavy on the page. What kind of science required secretly pulling children's teeth? What experiments had he been conducting here, in this very room perhaps? I closed the journal and returned it to its hiding place, along with the teeth. My ring still lay somewhere in the darkness beneath the floorboards, but I no longer wanted to retrieve it. Let it remain buried with the secrets of this house. In the morning, I would call the police. They would investigate. Perhaps they would find answers that the journal didn't provide. Perhaps some of those children, now grown, would finally understand what had happened during those after-hours dental appointments. For now, though, I sit by the window, watching the moonlight cast strange shadows across the floorboards. I hear footsteps sometimes, light as a child's, moving across the room behind me. But when I turn, there's only emptiness and dust motes dancing in the pale light. The house knows I've discovered its secret. The floorboards creak differently now, as if they're trying to tell me something more. And sometimes, when the house is quiet and I'm almost asleep, I swear I can hear the soft sound of a dental drill from somewhere deep within these walls. I wonder what else we might find hidden in the bones of this old house. What other secrets Dr. Mercer left behind. And I wonder if we should keep looking, or if some things are better left buried beneath the floorboards, wrapped in yellowed gauze and forgotten. Tomorrow the police will come, evidence will be collected, an investigation will begin. But tonight, in the darkness, I am the only one who knows what lies beneath our feet. The only one who carries the weight of dozens of small white teeth, each one a fragment of a child's lost innocence. And somewhere in this house, I'm certain, there are more secrets waiting to be found, more whispers trying to be heard, more stories wrapped in gauze and hidden in darkness, patient as the dead. Story 9, it happened once, then again. When she walked away from the mirror, her reflection stayed a second longer, just long enough to smile. The third time, it didn't follow her at all. She turned around and the glass was empty. I remember the way the light filtered through the dusty blinds of my office that morning, creating long golden stripes across my cluttered desk. The coffee in my mug had gone cold hours ago, but I hadn't noticed. My attention was focused entirely on the woman sitting across from me, her hands trembling slightly as they rested in her lap. "Detective," she said softly, her voice barely audible above the gentle hum of the ceiling fan. "No one believes me. They think I'm hallucinating, or worse." I'd been with the department for nearly 20 years, and in that time, I'd heard every story imaginable. But something about Alina Reeves made me lean forward, made me listen more carefully. Perhaps it was the calm certainty in her eyes that contrasted so sharply with her trembling hands. "Tell me again," I said, pulling out my worn leather notebook, "from the beginning." Alina took a deep breath. The ticking of the wall clock seemed to grow louder in the silence between us. 3 weeks ago, I noticed something strange. I was in my bathroom getting ready for work, nothing unusual about the morning. I turned away from the mirror to grab my makeup bag, and when I glanced back just for a moment, I saw my reflection lingering, like it had delayed following my movement by maybe half a second. She paused, gauging my reaction. I kept my expression neutral, my pen moving steadily across the page. I thought I imagined it, lack of sleep, stress from work, whatever, but then it happened again 2 days later. This time when I turned away, my reflection stayed in place, and it smiled, not my smile, something else. The air conditioning clicked on, sending a cool breeze through the room. Outside my window, I could hear the distant sounds of traffic, the normal rhythm of the city continuing unaware. The third time was 3 days ago, Alina continued, her voice dropping even lower. I looked in the mirror, saw myself as usual. When I turned to leave, something made me look back. The mirror was empty, completely empty. My reflection was gone. She reached into her purse and removed a small manila envelope, sliding it across my desk. I took these photos of my bathroom mirror after it happened. I don't know if they'll show anything, but I carefully opened the envelope and examined the photographs. They showed a simple bathroom mirror, nothing visibly unusual about it, but something about the angles, the lighting, something felt off in a way I couldn't quite articulate. Has anyone else witnessed this phenomenon? I asked, sliding the photos back into the envelope. Alina shook her head. I live alone. After the third incident, I covered all the mirrors in my house. I've been staying with my sister for the past 2 nights. I told her I had a pipe leak. I made a note of this, the scratching of my pen against paper, unusually loud in the quiet office. Have you noticed anything else unusual? Strange phone calls, items moved from where you left them, unfamiliar smells in your home? No, nothing like that, just the mirrors. Alina hesitated. Detective Carson, do you think I'm losing my mind? I looked at her carefully. In my line of work, you develop a sense for people who are fabricating stories. Alina didn't strike me as delusional or attention-seeking. There was genuine fear behind her composure. I think something is happening that you can't explain, I said finally. That doesn't mean you're losing your mind. That afternoon, I drove to Alina's address in the quiet suburb of Lakeside. The neighborhood was peaceful, manicured lawns, well-maintained houses set back from the street. Her home was a modest single-story with pale blue siding and white trim. Nothing about it suggested anything unusual. I knocked, waited, then used the key she had given me. The interior was neat and organized, with minimal decoration. True to her word, every reflective surface had been covered, mirrors draped with sheets, the television screen faced toward the wall, even the stainless steel refrigerator door partially obscured by a tablecloth. The silence in the house was almost tangible. I moved through each room methodically, noting nothing out of place. In the bathroom, I carefully removed the sheet covering the mirror. My own reflection stared back at me, tired eyes and furrowed brow, nothing unusual. I replaced the sheet and continued my inspection. The house had no basement, just a small crawl space beneath. The attic was similarly unremarkable, some storage boxes, holiday decorations, a layer of undisturbed dust. As I was preparing to leave, something caught my attention. On the hardwood floor of the hallway, near the bathroom door, there was a small, dark stain. I crouched down to examine it. It wasn't visible unless you were looking at just the right angle, in just the right light. I photographed the spot and took a sample, careful not to disturb the area more than necessary. The lab results came back 3 days later. The stain was blood, human blood, but not Alina's type. This detail alone wouldn't normally warrant further investigation, but combined with her strange account, it gave me enough reason to dig deeper. I pulled the property records for her house. Eleanor had been living there for just under a year. The previous owner had been an elderly man named Joseph Harmon, who had moved to a retirement community after living in the house for over 4 decades. Finding Harmon wasn't difficult. The retirement community was just outside the city limits, a pleasant complex with well-kept gardens and friendly staff. The old man seemed pleased to have a visitor, ushering me into his small but comfortable apartment with enthusiasm. "That house," he said after I explained my interest. "Good memories there mostly. Raised my daughter in that house after my wife passed." "Your daughter," I said, making a note. "Does she live nearby?" A shadow passed over Harmon's face. "Eliza died long time ago now. She would have been about your age, I suppose." "I'm sorry for your loss," I said automatically. "May I ask how she died?" Harmon's gaze drifted to the window where afternoon sunlight streamed in. "They said it was suicide. Found her in the bathroom. She'd done something to the mirror, broke it, cut herself badly." I felt a chill despite the warmth of the room. How old was she? 23, beautiful girl, smart too. Had some troubles though, said strange things sometimes, especially toward the end. I leaned forward slightly. "What kind of strange things, Mr. Harmon?" The old man sighed, his eyes still fixed on the distant point beyond the window. "She said she could see someone else in the mirror sometimes. Not herself, but someone who looked like her. Said this other Eliza would watch her, wouldn't move when she moved." He shook his head slowly. "The doctors said it was schizophrenia. Started medication, but it didn't seem to help much." I showed him a photograph of Eleanor. "Does this woman look familiar to you?" Harmon studied the image for a long moment. "No," he said finally. "Never seen her before, but she's got Eliza's coloring. Same hair, similar features." On my way out, I asked to see a picture of his daughter. Harmon retrieved an old photo album from a bookshelf. The resemblance between Eliza Harmon and Eleanor Reeves was subtle but unmistakable. The same heart-shaped face, the same deep-set eyes. I returned to Eleanor's house the next day with specialized equipment borrowed from a colleague in the forensics department. Under the ultraviolet light, the bathroom revealed what normal inspection had missed: faint traces of blood in a distinctive pattern around the mirror, mostly cleaned away but still detectable with the right tools. The blood pattern suggested it had sprayed outward from a central point, consistent with an arterial cut, but the focus point wasn't in front of the mirror, it was behind it. I carefully removed the mirror from the wall. Behind it was solid drywall, nothing unusual visible. But when I tapped gently along the surface, one section produced a slightly different sound, hollow. With careful precision, I cut into the drywall. The opening revealed a small space between the bathroom wall and the exterior wall of the house, a gap perhaps 8 inches wide that shouldn't have existed according to the building plans. Inside this hidden space was a small bundle wrapped in what had once been white cloth, now yellowed with age. I photographed everything before carefully removing it. The cloth contained a hand mirror with an ornate silver handle, remarkably preserved. The reflective surface was tarnished but intact. Carved into the back were initials, E.H. Later that evening, I sat in my office examining the mirror under the desk lamp. The silver felt unusually cold to the touch despite the warmth of the room. When I looked into its surface, my reflection appeared normal, if somewhat distorted by the tarnish. As I set it down on my desk, I caught a flicker of movement in its surface that didn't correspond to anything in the room. Just for an instant, so brief I might have imagined it, I thought I saw a face that wasn't mine looking back at me. The lab tests would later confirm that the bloodstains in the hidden space matched the type found on Alina's floor. Both were Eliza Harmon's type. The blood was decades old. Alina Reeves never returned to that house. She sold it quickly at a loss and moved to another state. I've kept in touch with her occasionally. She reports no further incidents with mirrors or reflections. The hand mirror remains in evidence storage. Sometimes, late at night when the department is quiet, I find myself thinking about it, wondering what might happen if someone looked into its surface for too long, or if they turned away too quickly. I've been a detective for most of my adult life. I've seen things I can explain and things I cannot. This case falls somewhere in between, a reflection of something that might be truth or might be delusion, depending on how the light hits it. All I know for certain is that when I walk past a mirror now, I find myself hesitating just for a moment before I turn away. Story 10. The real estate listing made no mention of a basement. The blueprints held no clue to its existence. Yet when the family uncovered a hidden door beneath the old carpet, a heavy, rusted handle awaited them. It took 3 of them to pry it open. Stale air, thick with the scent of damp earth, greeted them as they descended the steps into darkness. They anticipated storage space, but were met with a single chair illuminated by a swaying light bulb. And on the wall behind, a chilling row of photographs of them. The Mercer family had settled into the suburban home during the winter, enveloped by early darkness and skeletal trees. The aged structure exuded character and history, they reassured themselves. Little did they know the depth of history lurking within the walls, ready to collide violently with their present. Detective Sarah Connors arrived at the property with her partner, the crime scene unit already cordoning off the area with fluttering yellow tape. Mrs. Mercer's voice trembled as she recounted the discovery beneath their living room floor. Connors, donning latex gloves with precision, directed the forensic team to document every detail before further exploration. Camera flashes pierced the darkness of the stairwell as the team captured the eerie scene. The creaking wooden steps led to a small basement, akin to a standard bedroom, with gray concrete walls. In the center stood a solitary chair bolted to the floor under a harshly casting light bulb. However, it was the wall of photographs that held them spellbound, 37 images meticulously arranged in chronological order. As Connor's partner examined the timestamps on the prints, a realization dawned. The investigation unveiled no signs of forced entry, no theft, only a profound invasion of privacy and security. Forensics uncovered fingerprints, most belonging to previous homeowners. Records revealed a tumultuous history of ownership changes, each family departing within a year, oblivious to the hidden basement. The case grew more unsettling as they delved into the property's past. Inconsistencies in records, altered blueprints, and withdrawn permits painted a sinister picture. A pivotal moment arrived during an interview with the contractor who renovated the house 7 years prior. His denial of the basement's existence was contradicted by the photographs and the eerie room they depicted. Digital forensics unearthed a memory card hidden in the light fixture, revealing a voyeuristic collection of images and audio recordings of the families that had once dwelled within the walls. The investigation's climax arrived when a hidden passage behind the photographs unveiled a monitoring station with a journal chronicling intimate details of each family. The journal's author, Edward Kelvin, the house's original builder, had vanished from public records, leaving behind a trail of disturbing observations and delusions. The manhunt for Kelvin ended with his discovery curled within a crawl space, a ghostly figure embodying the house's dark secrets. His detached account of watching the families as his own creations revealed a twisted reality. A psychological evaluation diagnosed him with severe delusions, perceiving the families as temporary guests in his eternal abode. The Mercer family, like their predecessors, fled the house, leaving behind their possessions. The trial exposed the extent of Kelvin's surveillance network, designed within the house's architecture to document the lives of its unwitting inhabitants. As the property was razed and the families haunted by unseen eyes, they pondered the chilling question, were they ever truly alone? Story 11. Old apartment, peculiar sounds echoed through the pipes and creaked the floorboards. Yet the newest tenant sensed a difference in the rhythm of the noises she heard. The footsteps above were too precise, too deliberate to be dismissed as mere settling sounds. Strangely, they seemed to originate from the floor above her, even though she resided on the top level. One fateful night, she summoned the courage to tap the ceiling with a broomstick. The eerie sound abruptly ceased, plunging the space into a profound silence. Then, in the quiet darkness, a single knock reverberated from within the ceiling itself. Sarah Coleman chose to keep the mysterious knocking incident to herself, attributing it to the idiosyncrasies of the aging building, or perhaps a small creature that had found its way into the hidden recesses. Despite the persistent nightly footsteps that traversed her ceiling, she adapted by increasing the volume of her television, donning headphones to bed, anything to muffle the methodical footfalls that lingered in the shadows above. Detective Morris was alerted about the apartment when a maintenance worker stumbled upon a concealed crawlspace during routine repairs. This worker had dismantled a section of drywall in the hallway adjacent to Sarah's unit to address a leak, only to reveal a narrow passage that defied the building's architectural plans. A flashlight beam unveiled a crude living space within scattered food wrappers, discarded water bottles, a soiled blanket, and a worn notebook. The building manager swiftly contacted the authorities. Upon arrival, Detective Morris, accompanied by Detective Rivera, encountered the shaken maintenance worker who kept repeating, "Someone's been living in the walls, someone's been watching." The notebook contained meticulous observations of Sarah Coleman, her daily routines, visitors, meals, entertainment choices, bathing times, and sleeping patterns. The once orderly handwriting spiraled into chaos towards the final pages, with enigmatic symbols adorning the margins. "The subject no longer responds to my signals," the concluding entry read. "She has chosen to ignore me. No one ignores me." Forensic teams meticulously combed the crawl space, unearthing fingerprints that defied identification in any known databases. A complex network of passageways intricately woven into the walls and ceilings of the building was unveiled, some dating back decades based on structural assessments. These passages interconnected 5 distinct apartments, culminating in observation points disguised as innocuous fixtures or minor damages within only one unit, Sarah Coleman's. Interviews with current residents yielded no abnormal occurrences beyond typical apartment noises. Former residents, however, painted a starkly different narrative. 3 previous tenants of Sarah's apartment recounted sensations of being surveilled or hearing inexplicable movements. One had hastily vacated after a mere fortnight. None had disclosed their experiences, dreading they would be labeled paranoid. The breakthrough in the investigation occurred when forensic analysis exposed minuscule blood spatter within one of the crawl spaces. DNA testing linked it to Martin Weaver, a former resident who had vanished without a trace 4 years earlier. Following a fruitless missing persons report filed by his family, the case had grown cold. Martin had inhabited the apartment directly beneath Sarah's residence. Detective Morris revisited Martin's disappearance, discovering that he had voiced complaints about disturbances from the apartment above his own. Confrontation with the quiet occupant, Edward, ensued, leading to Martin's inexplicable disappearance. Edward subsequently vacated his unit without providing a forwarding address. Delving into Edward's rental history unveiled a pattern preferring top-floor accommodations, limited social interactions, and abrupt departures without notice. A meticulous search of property records exposed Edward's possession of secluded rural terrain. Upon arrival at the site, investigators stumbled upon a cabin adorned with photographs and notes. Images of former residents from various apartment buildings, including Sarah Coleman and Martin Weaver, adorned the walls. Elaborate maps delineating ventilation systems and structural weaknesses were strewn about, accompanied by detailed journals chronicling observations of the specimens and sustaining the habitat. At the cabin's heart, a corkboard displayed newspaper clippings of missing persons, report 6 in total, each a former resident from buildings Edward had inhabited. Beneath the board, deep gouges marred the wooden floor, hinting at repetitive heavy dragging. Trailing cadaver dogs led the investigators to freshly disturbed earth behind the cabin. Subsequent excavation unearthed human remains, then another grave and another. As forensic experts commenced the grim task of identifying the victims, Detective Morris returned to Sarah's apartment complex. Though the crawl spaces had been sealed off, residents sporadically reported lingering noises. During the installation of enhanced security measures, maintenance workers stumbled upon a hidden notebook wedged in a corner where the ceiling merged with the wall in the hallway. This new notebook, more recent than its predecessor, featured a solitary line on the initial page. "They found my old nest, but not my new one." The writing mirrored that of the earlier journal. The final page depicted a rudimentary sketch of Sarah's apartment layout, highlighting a new passageway in crimson. A date for that very night was inscribed. Officers hastened to evacuate Sarah, only to discover her unit deserted. Her phone rested on the kitchen counter, the television droned on, and the shower continued to run. Within the bathroom, a message materialized on the fogged mirror, scrawled by a fingertip, "Look up." The ceiling panel above the shower had been removed. The pursuit of Edward, now identified as Edward Mercer, a former construction specialist adept at renovations, persists. His expertise in building structures facilitated the creation of a clandestine network of observation points and passages. Thermal scans of Sarah's building yielded no indications of current occupancy within the walls. Sarah Coleman remains unaccounted for, her case linked to vanishing acts spanning multiple states. Authorities have issued alerts to apartment managers regarding unauthorized alterations and concealed spaces. The haunting image that lingers with Detective Morris is not of the graves, journals, or even the snapshots of unsuspecting residents. It's the image of Sarah, ensnared within an apartment with phantom footsteps above her, where no upper-level dweller existed. The steps that halted when she rapped on the ceiling, and then rapped back. At times, in the solace of his own abode, Detective Morris finds himself gazing upward at his ceiling, attuned to the silence, waiting and pondering who else might be listening in the shadows. Story 12. The old house sat quietly, untouched by life for many years. Whispers from the neighbors spoke of its haunting past, of a young woman who vanished without a trace. And yet, when the new occupants ventured inside, they were met with a mystery locked within the confines of a bedroom. Upon breaking the seal of the locked door, a wave of dust and neglect greeted them, clinging to the air like a forgotten memory. But amidst the stillness, something felt amiss. The bed neatly made, the mirror devoid of smudges. A solitary candle, its flame long extinguished, stood as a silent witness to the room's secrets, its wax a frozen echo of bygone tears. In the midst of this eerie tableau lay a notebook, its pages marked with fresh ink. Detective Morgan sifted through the entries, each stroke of the pen bearing the mark of Elise Winters, a young woman who had vanished into the shadows 5 years prior. Her meticulous handwriting told a story of fear and suspicion, culminating in a chilling final entry dated the night she disappeared. "I know he's watching me tonight," the words whispered from the page. "The same car passes by, a silent predator in the night. I have called out for help, but my cries fall on deaf ears. If the worst comes to pass, know that it was no random fate." The detective closed the notebook, the weight of Elise's words hanging heavy in the stale air of the room. A faint chemical scent lingered, mingling with the musty odor of neglect. The landlord, a ghostly figure in the doorway, murmured of forgotten checks and unlocked doors, his face a mask of disbelief. Elise's life, once painted in shades of routine and professionalism, now unfolded before the detective's eyes in a room frozen in time. Her disappearance, a puzzle with missing pieces, led the investigation down a twisted path of deceit and betrayal. As the forensic team combed the room for hidden truths, they uncovered a hidden compartment beneath a loose floorboard, a secret cache holding a key and a flash drive. The key led them to a vault of damning evidence, exposing a web of corruption and deceit that stretched far beyond the confines of the old house. The recordings on the drives revealed a dark truth, manipulated data, hidden agendas, and the silent screams of those betrayed by the very system meant to protect them. Elise's pursuit of justice, though cut short by a sinister hand, echoed through the digital archives she left behind. The case unfolded like a dark symphony, each note a revelation of the shadows that lurked beneath the surface of society's facade. Vincent Harriman, a man of power and influence, stood at the center of the storm, his crimes laid bare for all to see. Through hidden passages and forgotten tunnels, the truth emerged, a beacon of light in a sea of darkness. Harriman's downfall was swift, his lies crumbling like a house of cards in the face of undeniable evidence. In the end, justice prevailed, though Elise's body was never found. Her legacy, etched in ink and digital code, stood as a testament to her unwavering resolve in the face of insurmountable odds. The house, once a sanctuary of secrets, now stood empty once more, its walls echoing with the whispers of the past. Locals shunned its shadowed facade, haunted by the memory of a young woman who dared to challenge the mighty. And as night fell upon the deserted house, a flicker of light danced in the upstairs window, a silent vigil in remembrance of a soul who never truly left. Elise Winters, a ghostly presence in the stillness of the night, her spirit a beacon of truth in a world shrouded in darkness. Story 13. In the realm of the inexplicable, a tale unfolds like a soft whisper in the night. A mysterious call, a voice from the past, reaching out from the shadows of an empty house. It all began with a simple pocket dial, a mere crackle of static and distant murmurs. The operator, on the verge of dismissing it as a fluke, suddenly heard a woman's voice, urgent and trembling, words tumbling out in a rush. "He's here. He," and then silence enveloped the line like a heavy shroud. The number traced back to a desolate dwelling, a place abandoned to time's cruel embrace for years on end. No signs of intrusion, no disturbances to speak of. Yet in the quiet solitude of the dust-laden kitchen, a phone sat upon the counter, its screen aglow with an eerie light. The call had been placed mere moments ago, a chilling realization that sent shivers down Detective Morgan Reed's spine. With a sense of foreboding, she pressed the playback button repeatedly, each repetition only deepening the mystery. The whispered words lingered in the air, haunting her every thought. Desperation, fear, an air of impossibility that clung to the very essence of the abandoned property. Once home to the Sullivan family, now a mere shell of memories after a devastating fire had torn through its west wing, driving them away. No soul had dwelled within those walls since, save for a caretaker who swore by the house's emptiness. "Background check on the number," Morgan inquired of her partner, Detective Walsh. The answer revealed a truth that defied logic. Registered to Catherine Sullivan, the deceased daughter of the former residents, a woman who had perished in a tragic car accident 3 years prior. The pieces of the puzzle refused to fit. A phone that shouldn't be calling from a house that shouldn't be occupied. The very fabric of reality seemed to unravel before their eyes. The evidence offered no solace, no clear path to follow. The forensic team's efforts yielded naught but dead ends. No fingerprints, no footprints, no trace of the elusive caller. Only the enigmatic recording, those 11 seconds of static and breath, the 5 haunting words that echoed through the void. Voice analysis confirmed the impossible, a spectral connection to Catherine Sullivan herself, with an unsettling 98% certainty. The timestamp, a cruel twist of fate, aligning the call with the moment of her untimely demise. Interviews were conducted, shadows of the past summoned forth to shed light on the darkness. Family members, friends, loved ones, all woven into the intricate web of Catherine's life. Each thread tugged at the seams of truth, revealing fragments of a harrowing tale. Her father, remarried, stood bewildered. Her mother, a figure of sorrowful solitude, crumbling beneath the weight of a spectral voice. And Mark Jennings, the former flame, now a specter of suspicion, his alibi tested against the whispers of the past. But it was a journal, a relic of forgotten truths that breathed life into the cold case. Words penned in secrecy, confessions of a love turned sour, of control and fear that festered beneath the surface. The final entry, a chilling prophecy of doom, laid bare the intentions of a man unhinged. Morgan's gaze bore into Mark's facade, his veneer of innocence cracking under the weight of damning evidence. The truth, a macabre revelation unearthed from the depths of a tragic past. A buried phone, a silent witness to a crime most foul, its secrets laid bare by the relentless pursuit of justice. Text messages erased but not forgotten, a digital trail leading to the heart of darkness. And in the cold light of scrutiny, the veneer of innocence shattered, revealing the monstrous truth that lurked beneath. Mark's reign of terror, a sinister tapestry woven with threads of deceit and malice, unfurled before the eyes of justice. A man driven by madness, by a need to silence the voices that accused him from beyond the grave. His twisted game of deception, a ploy to evade the reckoning that awaited him. As the wheels of justice turned inexorably towards their conclusion, Mark's facade crumbled, his true nature laid bare for all to see. A jury's swift deliberation, a verdict rendered in the name of the fallen, the voices silenced but not forgotten. And in the hush of the courtroom, as the gavel fell, a sense of closure descended upon the weary souls gathered there. The phone from the abandoned house, a relic of a dark chapter in the annals of time, now rests in a place of honor. A silent sentinel to the power of truth, to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of unspeakable evil. And though its battery lies dormant, officers swear they hear its phantom ring in the dead of night, a spectral echo of a voice that refuses to be silenced. In the end, Catherine's story endures not as a ghostly whisper, but as a testament to the indomitable will of those who seek justice. Her voice, a beacon of hope in a world shrouded in darkness, a reminder that even in death, the truth will always find a way to be heard. Story 14. They stumbled upon it in the attic, concealed beneath a worn-out blanket. A porcelain doll, fragile and ancient, with its vivid blue eyes painted wide and unwavering. It was a doll neither of them recognized. Initially, they dismissed it as just another forgotten relic of the past. Yet that night, as they settled under the covers, a strange sensation lingered in the air. The atmosphere grew denser, the quietness elongated. And when morning arrived, the doll had vanished from the attic, now perched at the foot of their bed. The young pair, Sarah and Michael, had acquired the Victorian residence through an auction, captivated by its intricate woodwork and enigmatic allure, despite whispers of a troubled history. They were enthralled by the stories woven into the very walls of the house, unaware that they were about to become entwined in its narrative. Detective Rachel Winters received the call on a crisp autumn morning. A woman's lifeless form had been discovered in the main bedroom, her limbs twisted at unnatural angles, eyes frozen open in a rictus of terror. In the hallway lay the male victim, as if attempting a futile escape. The scene was pristine, no signs of forced entry, no traces of a struggle beyond those final moments. "The positioning is deliberate," Detective Winters murmured, her voice soft as she recorded her observations, while crime scene photographers meticulously documented every detail. The woman appears almost staged, like a doll plucked from a display case. The investigation commenced with thorough interrogations of neighbors. An elderly resident recalled glimpsing a shadow flitting behind an upstairs window when the couple should have been away. Another mentioned hearing what seemed like a child's laughter emanating from the vacant house during the night. Each anecdote added a layer of disquiet to the burgeoning case. Forensic analysis unveiled minuscule fibers scattered throughout the resident's antique cotton and silk, akin to materials used in vintage doll attire. The highest concentration was around the victim's remains and the attic space. More unsettling was the absence of evidence. No foreign fingerprints, no intruder DNA, no footprints where they shouldn't have been. "It's as if the perpetrator was never physically present," remarked the lead forensic analyst. The focus shifted to the property's history. Records unveiled a pattern: 3 preceding owners over 6 decades met their demise under mysterious circumstances. Each case remained unresolved, with reports of inexplicable oddities. One family recounted discovering antique toys in rooms they had just tidied. Another detailed hearing footsteps when the house was empty. Delving deeper, Detective Winters unearthed a newspaper clipping from decades past. A renowned doll maker had once resided in a house with his daughter. The child's demise was shrouded in suspicion, and though the father was interrogated, he was never charged. Before taking his own life, he had crafted one final doll reputed to be a flawless replica of his daughter. Strangely, the inventory list from Sarah and Michael's purchase mentioned no such doll. As the detective probed further, a common thread emerged among the victims. Each had made alterations to the house, particularly to the attic space. Sarah and Michael had initiated renovations the week before their deaths, intending to transform the attic into a study. A breakthrough arrived with the discovery of aged photographs concealed in a hidden compartment beneath the attic floor. The pictures depicted the doll maker and his collection, with one doll standing out identical to the one found by Sarah and Michael. The images portrayed the doll in varying poses, almost as if it shifted between shots taken moments apart. Infrared scans of the walls unveiled a chilling revelation: faint handprints, invisible to the naked eye, trailing from the attic to the main bedroom, alongside an enigmatic residue identified as a blend of porcelain dust and unidentifiable organic matter. The investigation took an unexpected turn when Detective Winters interviewed a distant relative of the doll maker. The woman divulged family legends about the doll maker's unconventional methods, purportedly infusing human elements into his creations to infuse them with life. She spoke of rituals performed to bind spirits to objects, wisdom the doll maker had gathered during his travels. The most perfect dolls, she whispered, were never mere playthings. Following this revelation, the case hit a standstill. No suspects emerged. No conventional rationale could explain the evidence. The inquiry remained active but grew cold. Detective Winters requested to retain the doll as evidence, securing it in a locked cabinet at the precinct. The subsequent morning, officers found her office door ajar, the cabinet empty. The detective herself was located at her desk, bewildered but unharmed, with no recollection of the previous night. The security footage showed only static during those hours. The house changed hands at auction once more, its troubled past driving the price down despite its architectural splendor. The new owners discovered the attic bare, save for a neatly folded, tattered blanket in the corner. The doll was never retrieved, and the deaths of Sarah and Michael became another unsolved enigma, occasionally whispered about in the precinct corridors. Some claim to have glimpsed the doll in the evidence room, though inventory checks never substantiated its presence. Detective Winters retired prematurely, citing personal motives. On her final day, she extracted a solitary item from her personal files, a photograph of the doll maker with his collection. She sealed it in an envelope labeled "Never Open," stowing it away. The new occupants reported no disturbances, opting to leave the attic undisturbed. Yet on tranquil evenings, neighbors would speak of catching sight of a small shadow flitting behind the attic window and hearing what seemed like the faint laughter of a child. Story 15: The Enigmatic Manor. The new owners brushed off the peculiar crackling of the old intercom system late at night, dismissing it as a quaint quirk of the past. The system, a relic of another era, had been rewired but left forgotten in the shadows of the Victorian manor. One fateful night, curiosity got the best of the husband as he pressed the button, only to be met with a whisper that sent shivers down his spine. "Why did you come back?" a voice murmured through the crackling speaker, startling him to the core. Beside him stood his wife, equally surprised, denying ever uttering those words. The manor, with its historic charm nestled amidst ancient oak trees, exuded an eerie tranquility that belied the mysteries hidden within its walls. Daniel and Meredith Parker, the new owners, had been drawn to the property by its history and unique features, including the vintage intercom system that connected every room. Detective Sarah Reeves arrived at the manor in response to a call about a possible break-in, but there was an underlying tension in the air that hinted at a deeper tale waiting to be unraveled. Daniel, with a haunted look in his eyes, recounted how the strange occurrences had begun with the intercom static, whispers, and eventually coherent sentences that both he and his wife had heard. Meredith, sitting rigidly on an antique sofa, disclosed a startling discovery they had made behind a wall while renovating the kitchen pantry. Hidden within the crumbling drywall was a small leather-bound journal belonging to a woman named Alina, the past owner of the house. The journal entries painted a picture of Alina's fear that her husband, Vincent, was plotting against her. As Detective Reeves delved into the history of the house, she uncovered the tragic story of Vincent and Alina Blackwood, the previous owners. Vincent had sold the house after Aliner's disappearance, but there was no trace of her existence beyond the final journal entry. The investigation led to the chilling revelation of human remains buried beneath the garden shed, confirming Aliner's fate. Vincent Blackwood, now elderly and residing in a care facility, confessed to the murder of his wife, citing her incessant voice through the intercom as his motive. He had meticulously fabricated a tale of her leaving him, deceiving all those around him for decades. The trial exposed the depth of his deception and the cold-blooded nature of his crime. Daniel and Meredith, unable to bear the weight of the house's dark past, sold the property after a somber memorial for Aliner in the restored garden. The intercom system, a conduit for the voice of the long-silenced, was removed during renovations by the new owners. As workers dismantled it, whispers and static filled the air, dismissed as mere interference amidst the hum of power tools. Detective Reeves, closing the Blackwood case file for the final time, pondered the enigmatic nature of the manor that had finally unveiled its secrets through time. The legacy of Vincent and Aliner Blackwood lingered as a cautionary tale, earning the house the moniker of the house that answered back among local law enforcement. On her drives past the property, Detective Reeves would slow down, catching faint whispers in the breeze, a reminder of the voices that refused to be silenced. Story 16, the Polaroid lay aged, capturing a birthday from yesteryear. Gleeful faces, candles dancing a scene so familiar. Yet within the box of old memories passed down to the daughter, a revelation awaited. A form lingered in the background of the snapshots beyond the gathered family. A man cloaked in half-shadow, standing at the fringes of candlelight. He was not kin. No recollection placed him there, yet with each photo he drew nearer. Sarah Winters stumbled upon the collection amidst the remnants of her mother's attic post-funeral. A simple cardboard box labeled Memories held a trove of faded images chronicling bygone family gatherings, a treasure trove of joyous occasions, one would assume. But for Sarah, it unleashed a descent into darkness. In the initial photo, his presence was a mere whisper, a figure on the periphery during her 7th birthday festivity. An enigmatic silhouette by the glass door, features obscured, observing. In the subsequent snapshot, a shift occurred. He had crossed the threshold. By the 3rd, he loomed behind her uncle. None in the frames seemed privy to his looming presence. Trembling, Sarah phoned her father, disclosing her unsettling find. "Dad, who is this man haunting these pictures?" A pregnant pause followed, then a sharp inhale. What man? Only family should be there. Digital images of the Polaroids were dispatched to her father. His subsequent call carried an uncharacteristic tremor. Impossible. A stranger would not have gone unnoticed. Detective Marcus Reed attentively absorbed Sarah's narrative as she laid out the photos on his precinct desk. Rain whispered against the windows, casting ethereal shadows over the evidence. The detective's weathered hands navigated the photographs with precision, his gaze narrowing. "No one recognizes this individual," he inquired, a blend of neutrality and intrigue in his tone. "None," Sarah affirmed, "but witness his progression." The photos aligned in sequence. Leaning in, the detective's chair creaked beneath his weight. What initially seemed paranoia now materialized before him. The figure weaved purposefully through the festivities, advancing photo by photo, inching closer to the children. In the final frame, he stood directly behind Sarah's youthful self, an outstretched hand poised at her shoulder, just beyond the frame's edge. "The photographer," Reed proposed, skepticism tainting his words. "My mother took all these. She set the timer, then joined the frame. Copies were made, a case file opened. Within days, all living attendees of the party were contacted. None recalled the man, no hired help, no neighboring visitors. The property, secluded, a countryside retreat chosen for its seclusion." Facial recognition software faltered the figure remained strategically veiled in each photo, as if cognizant of the lens. Yet his posture bespoke intent rehearsal. The inquiry might have stalled had Sarah not unearthed additional photos in different family albums, diverse gatherings, separate years, yet the same figure, a specter in the backdrop, unnoticed in the moment. A specialist enhanced the images, unveiling decades-old degradation. Beneath harsh digital light, revelations emerged: a wrist scar, a distinctive ring, a reflection on a window, casting light on features once shrouded in shadow. A breakthrough came via dental records. The teeth visible in one enhanced image matched those of Robert Keller, a maintenance worker gone missing after being linked to 3 child disappearances in the region, cases long gone cold. Cases aligning with the dates of the photographed gatherings. Keller had been employed by the company managing the vacation property hosting Sarah's birthday, possessing master keys to various rentals in the vicinity settings where other families convened, settings where children later vanished. Subsequent searches of Keller's former abode unearthed buried trinkets, a hair clip akin to one worn by a missing girl, a toy car belonging to a vanished boy from a family reunion, a bracelet Sarah recognized as her own, presumed lost in her youth. Alone in her apartment, surrounded by the unraveling horrors captured in the photos, Sarah received a call from the detective. Remains found near a vacation property had been identified. DNA confirmed one of the missing children, her gaze fixed on the final birthday picture. Warm candlelight bathed her family's faces, frozen in jubilation. And behind her youthful self, shrouded in shadow yet unmistakably present, the figure observed, patient, calculating, unseen amidst the joyous revelry. The disclosure united unsolved mysteries spanning decades. Closure for families, albeit a bittersweet one. The shadow in the family photos had emerged into the light of justice, his presence acknowledged after years of concealing in plain view. Sarah gathered the photos, relegating them to evidence, a testament that sometimes the gravest threats lurk in captured moments unseen by the naked eye, phantoms maneuvering through festivities undetected, leaving but a faint trace of their passage through frozen time. Story 17. Renovations always held the promise of unraveling secrets long forgotten. Dusty relics of the past, hidden treasures left behind, whispers of bygone eras. Sarah and Michael delved into their latest project with eager anticipation, ready to breathe new life into the aged Victorian home they had acquired. The allure of its intricate details and storied past had drawn them in, but what they uncovered beneath the floorboards was beyond their wildest imaginings. As they pried up the wooden planks, a delicate letter revealed itself, nestled snugly in the shadows. The paper, yellowed with age, bore a cryptic message: "Don't trust the one who knocked." Before the weight of those words could fully settle upon them, a series of sharp knocks reverberated through the silent house, sending shivers down their spines. Detective Alina Reed, a seasoned investigator with a keen eye for the enigmatic, arrived on the scene with her partner. The couple recounted their unsettling discovery as Reed carefully retrieved the note, mindful of preserving any possible clues. The air hung heavy with unease as Reed observed the genuine fear etched on Sarah and Michael's faces. Background checks painted a picture of a seemingly ordinary couple, newlyweds, with stable lives and a bright future ahead. But the house harbored a darker history, one that whispered of untold secrets waiting to be unearthed. The previous owners, the Hargrove family, had left behind a legacy shrouded in mystery. Margaret Hargrove, the last matriarch of the family, had lived a solitary existence within the walls of the Victorian home until her passing. Neighbors spoke of her in hushed tones, describing her as a recluse with no known enemies. Yet the discovery of the hidden letter hinted at a tale far more sinister than anyone could have fathomed. Forensic analysis traced the origins of the note back 2 decades, revealing a tale of fear and desperation. Reed delved deeper into the past, piecing together fragments of the Hargroves' lives from faded memories and forgotten whispers. Franklin Hargrove, once a respected teacher and craftsman, had fallen into the clutches of a gambling debt that spiraled out of control. The collector, Victor Mercer, had come knocking, demanding recompense for debts unpaid. But Franklin's refusal to comply had set into motion a chain of events that would shake the very foundation of the old house. Margaret, caught in the crossfire of her husband's actions, had made a choice born out of fear and loyalty. The truth, buried beneath layers of deceit and betrayal, lay waiting to be uncovered. With each floorboard removed, the chilling reality of the past came to light. A skeletal figure, hidden beneath the house's foundation, bore witness to a tragedy long forgotten. Victor Mercer, the elusive collector, had met his end at the hands of Franklin's desperate bid to protect his family. Margaret's diaries, discovered in the attic, painted a harrowing portrait of a woman haunted by the echoes of the past. The relentless knocking that plagued her nights, a reminder of the darkness that lurked just beneath the surface. The case, though closed in the eyes of the law, left lingering questions that defied easy answers. The house, now tainted by the specter of its past, stood as a silent witness to the secrets buried within its walls. Sarah and Michael, unable to bear the weight of the house's history, chose to part ways with their newfound abode. The whispers of the past still echoed through the empty halls, a haunting reminder of lives intertwined and destinies entwined. As the night settled over the vacant house, a hushed stillness enveloped the air. And in the darkness, the faint sound of 3 distinct knocks echoed through the empty rooms, a ghostly reminder of the cautionary words that still lingered in the shadows. Story 18, The Whispering House. She felt the urge to repaint the nursery, a sanctuary for the new life she carried within. The walls, once a serene shade of faded blue, held secrets of years gone by beneath their worn layers. As she applied the first coat of fresh white paint, a hidden message slowly emerged, faint at first, then growing sharper and more defined. Don't let it hear you. Her breath caught in her throat, a shiver running down her spine. Stepping back to survey her work, she noticed something unsettling: the unmistakable imprint of tiny handprints in the wet paint, placed too high up on the wall for any child to have reached. The nursery of the Morgan residence became the epicenter of what would later become known as the Whispering House case. The young couple had purchased the Victorian-style home at a suspiciously low price, unaware of the dark history that lurked within its walls. Detective Sarah Klein, notebook in hand, arrived at the residence, greeted by a pregnant woman in paint-splattered overalls, her eyes shadowed with exhaustion. Trembling, the woman recounted the eerie discovery of the hidden message and handprints, sharing that the previous owners had vanished overnight, leaving behind only essential belongings in their hasty departure. Inside the historic home, Detective Klein's footsteps echoed on aged floorboards as she examined the nursery wall, where the chilling message and ghostly handprints remained untouched. A sense of foreboding hung heavy in the air as she delved deeper into the home's unsettling past. Back at the precinct, the detective delved into the property's records, uncovering a pattern of quick turnovers and disturbing child welfare reports from past residents. Whispers from the walls, unseen eyes watching in the night, the tales were chillingly consistent. Further investigation led Detective Klein to the house's original owner, Eleanor Blackwood, a widow who had run an orphanage on the property long ago. Tragic newspaper clippings hinted at the disappearance of 5 children under Aliner's care, their fate shrouded in mystery. Former residents shared tales of inexplicable occurrences within the house, playthings moved by unseen hands, laughter echoing in empty rooms, and cryptic messages appearing on nursery walls. But it was the handprints, recurring in size and placement despite changing occupants, that sent a shiver down the detective's spine. A breakthrough came when ground-penetrating radar revealed anomalies beneath the basement floor, child-sized shapes that led to a grim discovery. 5 small sets of remains, arranged in a circle, confirmed the tragic end of the orphaned children who had once called the house their temporary home. Luminol sprayed in the nursery unveiled a haunting sight, countless handprints glowing in the darkness, a silent testament to the children's desperate attempts to escape their fate. Aliner's journals, unearthed from dusty archives, revealed her macabre belief in harnessing the life force of orphaned children to prolong her own existence. With justice served for the victims, the house remained tainted by a lingering malevolence that no amount of paint could conceal. The nursery walls, witnesses to unspeakable horrors, were demolished in an attempt to erase the darkness that clung to the property. Yet whispers of children's voices persisted within the debris, chilling the hearts of those who dared to listen. The pregnant couple, unwilling to set foot in the house again, left their belongings behind as a silent offering to the restless spirits that dwelled within. As Detective Klein closed the case, a sense of unresolved mystery lingered, a reminder that some crimes leave scars that transcend time and space. The photograph of 5 glowing handprints etched in her mind, a haunting reminder of the souls lost to the whispering house, a place where the past echoed with the whispers of the innocent, forever seeking solace in the depths of eternity. Story 19. The aged apartment exuded a sense of history, its walls whispering tales of bygone days. The heating system let out a low groan, the pipes rattling in a familiar rhythm. It was all part of the building's charm, or so she convinced herself. But then one fateful night she heard it, a voice soft and distant drifting through the ventilation shafts. It wasn't the typical noise of neighbors chatting or TV shows playing. This voice was different. It whispered her name, beckoning her closer. Intrigued and unnerved, she pressed her ear against the vent, feeling a chill brush past her cheek, followed by a playful yet eerie declaration, "I know you can hear me." Detective Morgan Shaw found herself standing in the empty apartment, a sense of unease settling in the air around her. Her gaze lingered on the rusted vent cover, forcibly removed from the wall. The forensics team diligently worked, capturing every detail with their cameras, trying to unravel the mystery that had unfolded within these walls. The missing woman, Alina Reeves, had been absent for a week before anyone noticed her absence. And what they discovered hidden in the ventilation system was beyond comprehension. Officer Patel, reading from his notepad, recounted Alina's claims of hearing voices through the vents, voices that had been dismissed as mere quirks of an old building by the management. Shaw knelt by the vent, observing the deep scratches around its edges, evidence of a desperate attempt to break free from within. The realization sent a shiver down her spine. The victim had been fighting to escape, trapped in her own home. Alina had been a beloved figure, a teacher adored by her students, with a bright smile and a collection of thriving houseplants. Her disappearance had left a void in the lives of those who knew her. As Shaw delved deeper into the case, she uncovered unsettling details that painted a picture of mounting paranoia in Alina's final days. The sister's account of Alina's distress and belief that she was being watched through the vents added a layer of complexity to the investigation. The forensic evidence unveiled a haunting connection between Alina and the hidden horrors within the apartment. Fibers from her clothing found in the vent, a mysterious fingerprint on the inside of the cover, it all pointed to a sinister presence lurking in the shadows. And then there were the chilling audio recordings recovered from Alina's phone, capturing a dialogue between her and an unseen entity, a voice from the other side of reality. The history of the building revealed a dark past, with tenants vanishing mysteriously, leaving behind whispers of eerie occurrences. The enigmatic building superintendent, Harold Weber, raised eyebrows with his nonchalant demeanor, downplaying the rumors of voices and strange noises as mere figments of imagination. But Shaw sensed a deeper truth lurking beneath his facade, a truth tied to the secrets hidden within the walls. A breakthrough came when a hidden passage was discovered in Alina's bathroom, leading to a network of maintenance tunnels that crisscrossed the building. Within these shadowy confines, a trove of evidence awaited the belongings of past tenants, remnants of lives observed and manipulated by an unseen predator. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, painting a chilling portrait of a voyeuristic obsession turned deadly. The arrest of Harold Weber shed light on the extent of his twisted obsession. His meticulously organized files, his digital chronicles of his victims, his shrine of mementos all spoke of a disturbed mind fixated on controlling the lives of others from the shadows. As Shaw confronted him, his eerie calmness sent a shiver down her spine, his cryptic words hinting at a connection that transcended the physical realm. The trial that followed exposed the depths of Weber's depravity, his meticulous planning juxtaposed with his delusional beliefs in a symbiotic relationship with the building itself. The jury's swift verdict of guilt was a testament to the horror that had unfolded within those walls, a horror that lingered like a ghostly echo in the empty corridors of the now deserted apartment building. Despite attempts to cleanse the building of its tainted history, the whispers persisted, the echoes of past traumas reverberating through the vents. Residents came and went, driven away by the inexplicable sounds that haunted the halls. The building stood as a silent witness to the darkness that had unfolded within its confines, a monument to the chilling legacy of a man who believed he could speak through its walls. And so the apartment building remained a place of whispers and shadows, where the past intertwined with the present in a haunting dance of echoes and secrets. The heating system groaned, the pipes rattled, and the residents tried to ignore the unsettling whispers that lingered in the air, a reminder of the horrors that had once lurked within the walls. In the stillness of the night, they told themselves it was nothing unusual, seeking solace in the fragile illusion of safety within those haunted halls. Story 20. In the quiet of a suburban neighborhood, a mysterious key arrived in the mail, shrouded in enigma, wrapped in a plain envelope with no return address. Its brass surface, weathered with time, exuded a sense of familiarity that tugged at the homeowner's mind, though she couldn't place it. Every lock she owned remained unmoved by its touch, rejecting its unknown purpose. Perplexed, she set it upon her coffee table, where the ancient grandfather clock in the hallway stirred from its slumber to emit a solitary, haunting chime, a sound long silenced by the passage of years. Sarah Miller, the homeowner, felt unease settle as she pondered the strange occurrence. An ordinary key, yet its presence hinted at something unsettling lurking beneath the surface of her peaceful existence. Reporting the anomaly to authorities marked the beginning of a chilling chain of events that would shatter the neighborhood's tranquility. Initially met with skepticism, the responding officer dismissed the key as a mere mistake, but Sarah's intuition whispered of darker truths, compelling the officer to accept it as evidence. The key, now confined within a small evidence bag, held the key to unlocking a tale of terror waiting to unfold. Detective Robert Harmon, a seasoned investigator from the Special Victims Unit, inherited the case file steeped in mystery. The unassuming brass key sat upon his desk, a silent harbinger of impending revelations. Delving into Sarah's background, he found no shadows, only a retired teacher, a widow with grown children, leading a quiet life far removed from suspicion. Forensic examinations yielded little beyond Sarah's touch upon the key. The envelope divulged no secrets, bearing only a generic postmark. The key itself, a common schlage, bore the marks of time and wear, hinting at a past shrouded in shadows. A breakthrough emerged when Harmon traced the key's distinctive pattern to a cold case, its echoes reverberating from 7 years past. An identical key had unlocked a storage unit harboring grisly secrets, blood-stained carpets, tools of cutting, and images of women lost to the shadows of memory. The original investigation had faltered, leaving behind unanswered questions and unspeakable horrors. Through meticulous detective work, Harmon uncovered a connection leading to Harold Jenkins, a shadow from Sarah's past who had slipped into the night. As the investigation deepened, Sarah's anxiety swelled, prompting her to fortify her home against the encroaching darkness. Jenkins' elusive presence loomed large, casting a pall over her once peaceful abode. The search for Jenkins unfurled a tapestry of deception and dread. A substitute teacher, a phantom in the night, he had left behind a trail of breadcrumbs leading to unspeakable acts. The community recoiled in horror as Jenkins' true nature came to light, unveiling a predator hiding in plain sight. Jenkins' macabre collection of keys, meticulously labeled with names and dates, unraveled a tapestry of horror. The cabin of his deceased mother held secrets buried beneath its floorboards, rooms of unspeakable horrors, each key a testament to lives lost in the shadows. The manhunt for Jenkins stretched far and wide, a web of fear cast over the land. The press dubbed him the Keymaster, a moniker that struck terror into the hearts of all who heard it. In a final, desperate bid to evade capture, Jenkins met his end in a remote tower, his secrets laid bare in a journal of atrocities. The truth, unveiled in chilling detail, exposed a darkness that had lurked unseen in their midst. As the dust settled, 32 victims were counted, their voices echoing from beyond the grave. Sarah, forever changed by the ordeal, turned her back on the house that had harbored such malevolence, seeking solace in a world forever altered by the horrors she had witnessed. The grandfather clock, once a portent of dread, now stood silent, a sentinel guarding secrets best left undisturbed. In the quiet of the evidence locker, a collection of brass keys whispered of lives lost and a truth too terrible to fathom, a reminder that darkness can lurk behind the mask of the ordinary, waiting to be unmasked by the light of truth. Story 21. The tale began innocently enough for Michael and Sarah Klein, the new inhabitants of a Victorian-era home that whispered secrets from its time-worn walls. Nestled within the charm of high ceilings and ornate woodwork, the couple found themselves drawn into a mystery that transcended time. It all started with a simple water stain in the master bedroom, a yellowish blemish creeping across the floral wallpaper like a forgotten memory resurfacing. Curiosity sparked as they peeled back the layers of the wallpaper, revealing a hidden narrative beneath the surface. In faded ink, a name emerged: Alina Winters, repeated endlessly in a frantic, uneven script that seemed to echo with a sense of urgency. The discovery left Michael and Sarah unsettled, the weight of the unknown pressing upon them like a heavy fog. As they delved deeper into the enigma of Alina Winters, a missing person from decades past, the line between reality and mystery blurred. The woman in the old photograph bore a striking resemblance to the previous homeowner, Margaret Cavendish, whose silver-streaked dark hair held a secret connection to the walls that whispered of Alina. Their nights became consumed with unraveling the tangled threads of the past, piecing together fragments of a story long forgotten. The internet yielded sparse clues, leading them down a rabbit hole of archived articles and faded memories. With each revelation, the shadows of the past grew longer, casting a haunting presence over their once peaceful abode. Sarah's fingers traced the name on the wall, a silent plea for answers that seemed to elude them at every turn. The investigation became an obsession, pulling them deeper into a labyrinth of deception and betrayal. The discovery of hidden identities beneath the floorboards only deepened the mystery, revealing a web of lies spun by a fractured mind. Forensic teams descended upon their home, turning it into an active crime scene where the walls themselves seemed to speak of long-buried secrets. The excavation of the backyard unearthed the remains of Alina Winters, bringing a chilling finality to a story that had haunted the house for decades. Rebecca Eldridge, the elusive figure behind the tangled web of identities, was finally apprehended, her fractured mind unable to withstand the weight of her own deception. The truth emerged in a flurry of confessions, each name on the wall a testament to the shattered reality that had consumed her for so long. As Michael and Sarah stood on their front porch, watching the drama unfold before them, they knew that their dream home had become a vessel for a dark history that refused to stay buried. The walls bore witness to a tragedy that had finally come to light, leaving them to ponder the mysteries that lurked within the hidden corners of their once serene sanctuary. And as the night settled around them, lulling them into a state of quiet reflection, the echoes of the past whispered through the corridors of their home, a reminder that some stories are meant to be heard, even if they chill the soul with their enigmatic truths. Story 22. In the heart of the city, an apartment lay silent and still for months on end. When the new tenants ventured in, their expectations were low, perhaps just some dust, a few remnants left behind. Yet one door resisted all attempts to open it, a closet locked tight from within. With a forceful push, the landlord finally revealed its secrets. Anticipating forgotten belongings, they were instead met with a scene that sent shivers down their spines. The walls bore deep, jagged scratches etched in desperation into the wooden surface. Nestled in a corner, an ancient flip phone lay, its battery long deceased save for the one unread message illuminating the screen. Detective Morgan Shaw, a veteran of many unsettling investigations, felt a chill run down her spine as she surveyed the haunting sight before her. It wasn't the sight of blood or violence that unnerved her, but the silent screams echoed in those scratch marks, a tale of confinement and struggle. "We need forensics here immediately," she instructed her partner, Officer Reed, who diligently captured the haunting marks with his camera, "and gather all information on the previous tenants." The message on the forgotten phone was simple yet chilling. "I know what you did." The landlord, a jittery man with perpetually clammy hands, shared that the previous tenant had vanished suddenly, leaving rent unpaid. "A quiet young woman kept to herself, left 6 months back," he mumbled, avoiding the closet's gaze, "never caused any trouble." Forensic analysis uncovered a grim truth within the scratches on the walls, multiple blood samples intertwined with the grooves, most tracing back to a single individual, Emma Caldwell, a 28-year-old who had been reported missing. Yet there were two other DNA traces. One remained a mystery, absent from any database. The other belonged to a man presumed dead for 2 years, Derek Mercer, a name synonymous with a past marred by violence. "This defies all logic," Shaw muttered, studying the perplexing lab results. Derek Mercer, officially deceased after a fatal car accident, now left his genetic mark within Emma's sanctuary. Her apartment whispered of a life-interrupted unopened mail, a solitary coffee mug in the sink, a bed neatly arranged. Phone records hinted at a sudden silence in her communication with her sister, punctuated by a flurry of calls from an unknown number before her disappearance. The sister mentioned a secretive boyfriend, Officer Reed relayed. No name, just described him as intense and private. Surveillance footage captured a shadowy figure in a baseball cap trailing Emma into her building one fateful night, evading the camera's gaze. The breakthrough emerged when partial fingerprints linked to Derek Mercer surfaced on the closet's doorknob. He staged his own death, Shaw deduced. But why and what ties him to Emma? The unidentified DNA led them to another missing woman, Lynette Porter, who had vanished years earlier. Witnesses recalled a woman resembling Lynette visiting Emma's residence. Following a trail of clues, Shaw unearthed a connection. Derek Mercer's mother's vehicle was spotted near Emma's apartment, with a driver matching Mercer's description. The investigation led to a secluded property owned by the Mercer family, revealing a grim secret hidden behind heavy basement doors. Lynette Porter, frail and starved, a mirror image of Emma's confinement. "He forced me to watch," Lynette murmured, her eyes vacant with trauma. "Said I needed to learn the consequences of defiance." Evidence mounted against Mercer journals detailing his obsession with dominance, photographs of his victims, and chilling videos of Emma's captivity. "No one reveals my secrets," his voice echoed in the recordings. The manhunt for Derek Mercer spanned across jurisdictions, each revelation painting a darker portrait of his twisted desires. When apprehended at a bus terminal, Mercer carried a new identity and a ticket to an unknown coastal destination, a sinister purpose hidden within his belongings. During interrogation, his demeanor remained eerily composed. "She sent that message herself," he calmly claimed. "She desired discovery, yet she didn't deserve salvation." The trial exposed Mercer's elaborate charade of faking his demise, preying on women who bore resemblance to his initial victim. While Emma's body was never recovered, forensic evidence hinted at her tragic fate within that closet, her final plea captured in the unread message on the phone, a silent testimony against her captor. As the courtroom delivered a resounding guilty verdict, Mercer's smirk betrayed a cryptic satisfaction known only to him. Addressing the court, Lynette Porter declared, "He thrived in darkness, trapping us in his twisted reality. But while he rots in confinement, I'll bask in the light." The case redefined missing persons investigations, emphasizing relationship patterns and property searches. Detective Shaw preserved the closet door from Emma's apartment, a somber reminder that survival isn't always marked by bloodshed, but by the echoes of a soul fighting against the encroaching darkness. Story 23. In the heart of a storm, a leak in the roof forced her to venture into the attic, a place she never favored. The air was heavy with the weight of forgotten things, cloaked in layers of dust and cobwebs. Amidst the shadows, a relic from another time stood silently, a dollhouse, its intricate details whispering secrets of the past. Each tiny piece of furniture meticulously arranged, each room frozen in time. But as she gazed into the miniature world, a shiver ran down her spine. The figures within were not mere dolls, they were miniature replicas, delicately carved to resemble her family. Every member positioned precisely as they sat below except for one. The figure meant to be her stood near the attic's entrance, a silent sentinel. Running her finger along the dollhouse's roof, Rebecca Morgan felt the indented spot where the tiny wooden likeness stood. A chill crept through her, untouched by the draft that danced through the rafters. This dollhouse had no place here. This wasn't her childhood home, but a temporary abode her family had recently moved into. The unsettling discovery propelled Rebecca to reach out to the authorities in a frantic call. Law enforcement swiftly responded to the suburban dwelling, finding a family gripped by fear, huddled in the living room, reluctant to return upstairs. Detective Sarah Harmon, the lead investigator, initially brushed off their concerns as a prank or a trick of the mind in an unfamiliar setting. Yet the meticulous craftsmanship of the dollhouse lingered in her thoughts. The attention to detail was striking, Detective Harmon later recounted. Each miniature figure captured a unique essence of a family member: the father's graying hair, the son's favorite hoodie, even the mother's subtle birthmark. The investigation took a chilling turn when forensic analysis unveiled fingerprints on the dollhouse belonging to none of the family members. Even more unsettling were the microscopic cameras concealed within the miniature figure's eyes, all linked to a sophisticated surveillance system hidden beneath the dollhouse. Delving into the Morgan family's recent movements, a disturbing revelation surfaced. The positions of the miniature figures mirrored not just that evening but various days prior, suggesting a meticulous observer had been studying their every move. It was clear we were dealing with more than a mere stalker, explained Detective Harmon. The level of obsession displayed here was unlike anything we had encountered before. A concealed entrance in the basement, cunningly disguised behind a pantry wall, unveiled a makeshift living space. Clues of a covert resident emerged: food remnants, water bottles, a sleeping arrangement painting a picture of someone dwelling beneath the family's feet for weeks. Perplexing investigators was the absence of forced entry, with property records revealing the house lay vacant for almost a year before the Morgans' arrival. The previous owners, an elderly couple, had passed away within a short span, leaving their son to oversee the estate's sale and subsequent rental. Neighbors offered sparse insights, save for one elderly lady who sporadically noticed lights in the empty house. "I thought it was the real estate folks showcasing the property," she recalled. "Never once did I imagine someone might be living there without permission." Breakthrough arrived through digital sleuthing. Tracing the surveillance system's transmissions led investigators to a compact apartment across town. Inside, walls adorned with photographs of the Morgan family and past residents of the house painted a disturbing picture. Detailed journals chronicled each family member's daily routine with alarming accuracy. But the most unsettling sight was a workshop cluttered with half-finished dollhouses, each representing a different local household. The apartment belonged to Martin Wells, son of the former homeowners. Financial records hinted at mounting debts post-parental demise. Rather than selling the house outright, he had fashioned a covert living space, surveilling tenants while pocketing rental income. The dollhouse was his realm of control, elucidated the assigned forensic psychologist. Each miniature figure symbolized those under his watchful eye. Rebecca's figure by the attic door wasn't a threat, but a testament to her discovery of his clandestine monitoring. During interrogation, Wells remained eerily composed as he revealed his motive. "They were residing in my childhood home, occupying my parents' sanctuary. I needed assurance they respected it." When probed about the positioned figures, his reply was chillingly simple. "I wanted them to know they were always under my watchful gaze." Psychiatric evaluation unveiled a convoluted tale of possessive delusion. Unable to cope with the loss of his childhood abode, Wells engineered an intricate system to assert dominance over the property and its inhabitants. The dollhouse became his conduit to possess both the residence and its dwellers. The Morgan family bid farewell to their tainted dwelling, haunted not by the dollhouse's discovery, but by its implications. We were unknowingly scrutinized, our lives measured and manipulated, Rebecca lamented. The true horror wasn't the dollhouse itself, it was realizing we were mere puppets in his twisted game. Wells faced a litany of charges: stalking, privacy invasion, unlawful surveillance, and trespassing. The case spurred a review of real estate disclosure protocols concerning property histories and agents' obligations to ensure homes are vacated properly before new occupants move in. During sentencing, the judge acknowledged the egregious violation endured by the Morgan family. You didn't just breach their home, you shattered their sanctuary and autonomy. You observed their intimacies and recreated them for your amusement. What unnerves criminologists about the case is how long Wells could have operated unseen had Rebecca not stumbled upon the dollhouse. Analysis of his diaries hinted at his clandestine living in various homes for nearly 2 years, crafting dollhouses for each observed family. The Morgan family sought solace in a new distant abode, yet Rebecca confessed in her victim impact statement to a lingering unease, a persistent fear of being watched. She banished all dollhouses and miniatures from their new haven. Some days I can't shake the feeling of being monitored, she confessed. I wonder if somewhere, someone is still orchestrating a miniature version of me in a dollhouse I've yet to uncover. Story 24, The Hidden House. The small town nestled in the shadow of the woods harbored a secret, a house that whispered in the wind, its existence a mystery veiled in silence. No townsfolk dared utter its name, for fear of awakening the slumbering spirits that lingered within its walls. The house stood solitary, a sentinel of the forest's edge, its windows darkened by time, its porch weary under the weight of forgotten years. No one laid claim to its ownership, no memory lingered of the hands that had shaped its weathered frame. One fateful day, a group of intrepid hikers strayed too close to the house's boundary, drawn by an unseen force that tugged at their curiosity. And there, etched into the wooden siding like ancient runes, they beheld a chilling sight: names carved deep, as if etched by spectral hands. Among the list of the long-lost, a fresh addition gleamed in the fading light, a name unknown to any among the group. Whispers of unease fluttered through their midst until, with a trembling voice, one hiker confessed, "That name, it is mine." In the dead of night, a call pierced the silence, a voice laden with dread recounting a tale of trespass and terror. Mason Wright, the trailblazer who discovered his own name etched into the forsaken house, relayed his harrowing ordeal to the authorities, setting in motion a chain of events that would defy explanation. Detective Sarah Keller arrived under the cloak of darkness, her flashlight slicing through the shadows to reveal the haunting sight before her. The names, 27 in all, cascaded down the wall like a macabre waterfall of lost souls. Some faded with time, others remained stark and fresh, bearing the weight of recent carving. "I swear I've never set foot here before," Mason protested, his breath forming ethereal clouds in the chill night air. "I know not how my name came to be entwined with this forsaken place." The investigation unfurled like a tapestry of forgotten memories, each thread unraveling a tale of woe and mystery. Background checks unveiled a chilling truth: the names on the wall belonged to those who had vanished into the forest's depths over the span of decades, swallowed by the shadows without a trace. Forensic analysts meticulously documented the carvings, revealing a tapestry of sorrow etched into the very soul of the house. The oldest name, that of Rebecca Hanson, whispered a tale of a young woman lost to the woods 37 winters past, her fate entwined with the dark secrets that lurked within. As the tendrils of the investigation snaked deeper into the heart of the mystery, a shadow crept over Mason's own story. Strange occurrences plagued him, whispers of unseen presences, footprints leading to his door but never away, figures haunting the periphery of his vision. The truth unfurled like a sinister flower as buried records unearthed a specter from the past, a reclusive hunter named Victor Blackwood, who had disappeared without a trace, leaving behind a legacy of fear and suspicion. The forest yielded its own secrets, hidden hunting blinds lurking like silent sentinels along the well-trodden paths. Within one such blind, a journal whispered of twisted desires and dark obsessions, of humans stalked like prey in a malevolent game of cat and mouse. The manhunt for Blackwood spanned the breadth of the land, a desperate bid to snare the phantom that eluded their grasp. But as the net closed in, Mason vanished without a trace, leaving behind a chilling message etched into the very walls of his room. The hunt continued, a shadow play of fear and uncertainty, until a discovery in the hidden recesses of the house unveiled a sinister truth, a workshop of horrors, a freshly carved name awaiting its doomed bearer. And so a trap was set, a web of surveillance woven around the house that whispered in the night. A figure emerged from the depths of the forest, a specter of darkness and dread, slipping through the fingers of those who sought to ensnare it. To this day, the house stands silent and forbidding, a monument to the lost and the damned, its secrets buried deep within its walls. The names on the list have become a whispered legend, a cautionary tale that echoes through the ages, a mystery that lingers in the hearts of those who dare to speak its name. Story 25. The gentle current flowed lazily that tranquil morning, the water shimmering like glass under the soft sunlight. The fisherman, his boat barely rocking, almost missed the sight of a lone suitcase bobbing near the shore. At first glance, he assumed it was just a pile of discarded clothes left by careless hands. But as he drew nearer, a pungent odor enveloped him, thick, suffocating, impossible to ignore. The suitcase was encased in rusty chains, its corners weathered by time and exposure to the elements. When authorities pried it open, it wasn't garments they found inside, it was hair, fingers clenched in a frozen grip, and at the very bottom a cryptic message, "This isn't the first." Detective Sarah Mercer, a handkerchief pressed delicately to her nose, observed the somber scene before her. The victim, a woman in her mid-30s, with dark locks and skin now pallid and marred by the water's touch, lay before them. The meticulous medical examiner meticulously documented every detail, each step methodically taken before the body was gently lifted away. What struck Mercer most profoundly wasn't the method of disposal, but the eerie reverence shown to the victim's appearance: manicured nails, freshly styled hair, adorned in costly attire. "She wasn't merely discarded here," Mercer remarked, her gaze fixed on the lapping water against the muddy banks. "She was meticulously prepared, almost displayed." The victim was soon identified as Catherine Walsh, a successful real estate agent renowned for her dealings in high-end properties. Divorced, childless, she resided alone in an upscale neighborhood, a figure of ambition, precision, and secrecy among her peers. Her sudden disappearance was noted by her assistant, who raised the alarm when she failed to attend a crucial showing for affluent clients. She wouldn't simply vanish like this, the assistant insisted during questioning. That sale would have been the pinnacle of her career. Investigators combed through Walsh's sleek, modern abode. Everything was immaculate, almost unnaturally so. Designer furniture meticulously arranged, not a speck of dust in sight. The fridge stocked with neatly labeled, organized meals for each day. Her wardrobe meticulously curated by color, shoes neatly stored in protective covers. Yet a single anomaly caught their attention in her home office, a slightly ajar drawer. Within, a leather-bound journal lay hidden. The final entry chillingly read, "He's watching once more. Same vehicle, new plates." Further scrutiny into Walsh's digital footprint unveiled a peculiar pattern in her emails, multiple messages from unfamiliar addresses, all bearing the ominous phrase, "I see your perfection," sent at identical times on varying days. Her browsing history hinted at her frantic searches for home security systems and personal safety gadgets. Mercer pieced together these cryptic clues with the evidence from the crime scene, the meticulous arrangement of the victim's body, the chilling presentation. "Our perpetrator is methodical," she confided to her partner. "This wasn't a crime of passion. This was a carefully orchestrated ritual. A breakthrough emerged from an unexpected source. A local pawnshop proprietor recognized Walsh's distinctive emerald necklace, absent from her belongings. The individual who had pawned it turned out to be a regular Michael Linden, an unassuming maintenance worker of little note. Surveillance footage unveiled Linden's frequent visits to Walsh's building over several months, at times wheeling his maintenance cart, at others arriving alone. Always during hours when she would be away showcasing properties. When detectives combed through Linden's modest dwelling, they unearthed a chilling truth: walls adorned with photos of Walsh and other women, all sharing a striking resemblance, all captured without their knowledge. Some images were harshly crossed out with red ink. Walsh was the third victim. Concealed behind a false panel in his closet lay a shrine. Personal items belonging to each victim meticulously arranged, a hairbrush with strands entwined, tissues imprinted with lipstick, receipts, keys. Each collection accompanied by a small diary detailing daily habits, preferences, routines. The interrogation room turned icy as Linden was brought in. His demeanor remained composed, his appearance neat, his voice devoid of emotion. "They were flawed," he finally uttered, his tone flat. "They projected perfection, but I saw through their facade." Catherine's desk drawer was always in disarray. She missed a spot when applying lipstick. Her perfection was a facade. The search for the first two victims referenced in his note led investigators to remote locations where 2 additional suitcases were dredged up. Inside were women resembling Walsh, both real estate agents who prided themselves on their meticulous attention to detail. During the trial, Linden sat motionless, his visage impassive, as prosecutors unraveled his sinister methods. He had stalked each woman meticulously, learning their routines, infiltrating their homes, studying their lives. And when he ultimately claimed them, he sought to rectify what he perceived as their imperfections, washing and styling their hair, applying makeup with precision, dressing them in their finest attire before extinguishing their lives. The families of the victims watched in silence as the judge pronounced a life sentence without parole. For Detective Mercer, the case was officially concluded, yet uncertainties lingered. What triggered Linden's fixation on these particular women? What inner flaw of his own was he attempting to expunge through these atrocities? The river continued its unhurried journey downstream, its waters gradually erasing all traces. However, in the precinct upon Mercer's desk lay duplicates of those unsettling diaries, reminders that in the shadows of seemingly ordinary lives, darkness may lurk beneath the facade. And sometimes the most perilous predators are those concealed in plain sight, observing, waiting for a solitary flaw to surface. Story 26, the ancient library faced its fate of demolition as workers diligently carried out their tasks. Amid the dust and debris, a peculiar discovery unfolded when a laborer stumbled upon a concealed latch hidden within a bookshelf. With a gentle click, the bookcase swung open, unveiling a secret passageway that led to a secluded chamber. The air inside hung heavy, stagnant with decades of neglect. In the dimly lit space, devoid of furniture except for a solitary chair bolted to the floor, a haunting message etched repeatedly on the wall caught the eye. I am still here. The construction foreman swiftly contacted the authorities, setting in motion a sequence of events that would unravel a mystery shrouded in darkness. Detective Morgan Walsh, a seasoned investigator with 2 decades of experience, arrived at the scene, his flashlight casting eerie shadows as it pierced through the gloom, illuminating the cryptic message that adorned the walls. "Secure the area," Walsh commanded the officers, his voice resonating in the confined room. "No one disturbs anything until the forensic team arrives." The history of the building added layers to the enigma. The library had once belonged to the influential Harrington family, who had bestowed the structure to the public following the unexplained disappearance of their daughter, Rebecca. Vanishing without a trace during her final year of college, Rebecca left behind only her abandoned car near the outskirts of town. Despite extensive search efforts and interviews, the case grew cold, with speculations suggesting she had chosen to vanish voluntarily. However, her family vehemently rejected this notion, convinced of a darker truth. As forensic specialists meticulously combed through the hidden chamber, they uncovered clues embedded within the chair, strands of hair, fibers, and faint traces of blood and skin cells within the scratches on the walls. The evidence hinted at a grim tale of captivity and struggle. "This chair was meant to confine someone," the forensic analyst remarked, pointing to the aged leather straps and bolt holes that spoke of a violent past. Driven by a gut feeling, Detective Walsh delved deeper into the Harrington family's past. The timing of the library's donation after Rebecca's disappearance raised suspicions. Further inquiries unveiled a disturbing connection. The bookshelf concealing the hidden room had been installed by a contractor exclusively hired by Maxwell Harrington, Rebecca's uncle and the head of the family. Financial records hinted at exorbitant payments made to the contractor, far exceeding standard renovation costs. Former library staff shared their astonishment at the revelation, with one elderly librarian recalling Maxwell's peculiar insistence on preserving that particular section during renovations. Hours spent alone in the secluded area after closing time had been dismissed as a love for solitude, but now bore a sinister undertone. The investigation took a chilling turn when DNA analysis confirmed that the biological material found in the hidden chamber matched samples from Rebecca's personal belongings. The pieces began to fit together, painting a harrowing picture of a young woman held captive behind the walls of the library, possibly by a member of her own family. Armed with a warrant, detectives combed through the Harrington estate, where a hidden journal discovered in Maxwell's study unveiled a disturbing obsession with his niece. The final entry revealed a chilling resolve to silence Rebecca permanently. Confronted with irrefutable evidence, Maxwell's veneer of innocence shattered, revealing the depths of his depravity. In a heart-wrenching conclusion, the excavation beneath the hidden room unearthed Rebecca's remains, adorned with the silver bracelet gifted to her by her parents. The Harrington family, now stripped of their illusions, faced the grim reality of their own kin's monstrous deeds. As Maxwell faced justice, the library stood as a somber monument to a life stolen too soon. Community members adorned its entrance with flowers, paying homage to a soul silenced by treachery. In a poignant twist, Rebecca's haunting message, "I am still here," etched into the walls, ensured that her voice resonated through the ages, a testament to the enduring power of truth and justice. Story 27. The coffee shop had been his sanctuary for years, a place of quiet routine and solitude. Each day he would arrive, order his black coffee with no sugar, and retreat to his familiar corner table. The barista recognized his face, but his name remained a mystery to all. It was a place where time seemed to stand still, where the outside world faded away into a distant hum. Then one day he didn't come. The absence of his presence was like a ripple in the stillness of the shop. When the police investigated, they found his wallet left behind on the table. Inside, a driver's license with a face but no name, no address, just an empty space where his identity should have been. Detective Sarah Mercer delved into the mystery, watching the security footage with a furrowed brow. The man, now known as John Doe in the case files, appeared ordinary on the screen, unassuming, blending into the background with ease. But his sudden disappearance defied all logic. As Mercer watched the footage over and over, she noticed a peculiar detail. Each morning when John entered the shop, the time stamp on the camera flickered momentarily, a subtle anomaly that sent a shiver down her spine. She needed to uncover the truth behind this enigmatic vanishing act. The wallet held no answers, only more questions. Blank spaces where information should have been, credit cards linked to non-existent accounts, and a cryptic business card with a ghostly phone number. Mercer dialed the number, but silence greeted her on the other end, save for the sound of rustling paper. The barista's recollection painted a picture of a man who kept to himself, always writing in a mysterious notebook. The pages were filled with cryptic symbols and sketches of buildings unknown to the city. It was as if he existed in a world of his own creation, separate from the reality outside the coffee shop's walls. But the true revelation came when Mercer discovered a hidden space behind an antique mirror in the shop. Inside were identical wallets with blank information fields, a journal detailing experiments in temporal displacement, and references to crossing between realities. The pieces of the puzzle started to fall into place. John Doe was not who he seemed. He was Daniel Weston, a brilliant physicist who had vanished while working on a project involving quantum mirrors. Weston believed in the existence of parallel realities and sought to navigate the boundaries between them. The coffee shop, it turned out, was a nexus point where realities intersected, and the mirror was the gateway. The mirror that had stood in the shop for decades, its ornate frame concealing a passage to realms beyond human comprehension. As Mercer delved deeper into the mystery, strange occurrences began to unfold around the shop. Reflections moved of their own accord, sightings of Weston at his table when no one was there. The fabric of reality seemed to fray at the edges, revealing glimpses of the unknown. And then the climax of the investigation, the moment when Mercer saw two versions of Weston in the mirror, existing simultaneously in different planes of existence. It was a revelation that shook the foundations of her understanding of the world. But the experiment had reached its conclusion, the window between realities closing forever. The shattered mirror, the final note left behind, a warning not to follow into the unknown depths of existence. The case of the man who didn't exist remained a mystery, a tale whispered in hushed tones. The coffee shop closed its doors, the building fading into memory. Daniel Weston's fate remained unknown, his legacy woven into the fabric of an unsolved enigma. And Detective Mercer, haunted by the echoes of a reality beyond comprehension, retreated into her own world of secrets and enigmas. A fragment of the mirror hung on her wall, a reminder of the mysteries that lingered just beyond the surface of everyday life.